Yep.
He's got too many pools.
Two of those are major, right? Those are major.
Both things he wants to put, yeah.
Those are major.
Ready? Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the February 22nd, 2017 Township Committee meeting to order. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Committeeman Dorsey.
Here.
Committeeman Maringolo.
Here.
Committeeman Pasurcia.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Ray.
Present.
Mayor Schuler.
Here. All right, so we have with us this evening a fairly large contingent from Boy Scout Troop 59. We have a couple of Eagle Scouts that we'd like to recognize this evening. I will start with, in order that you guys received it, so Nicholas Haynes, could please pop on up. So come on up. Let me just. All right, yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I'll be right there. Right there?
He's coming to you.
I'll read it out here.
This one on?
There you go. All right. Whereas the Boy Scouts of America is a volunteer organization and is one of the nation's largest and most prominent values-based youth development organizations, and whereas Nicholas Haynes has achieved the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout due to his dedication and volunteerism in his community. Troop 59 of the Boy Scouts of America, Millington, New Jersey, has asked Long Hill Township to join them in recognizing his numerous achievements. And whereas Nicholas Haynes has demonstrated the spirit of volunteerism through his Eagle Scout project of designing, fundraising, building, and supervising the refurbishing of an outdoor classroom at Watchung Hills Regional High School, Warren. And whereas Nicholas Haynes is a senior at Watchung Hills Regional High School and will be attending University of Colorado to study sustainable energy. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Long Hill in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, and on behalf of the residents of Long Hill Township on February 22nd, 2017, that Nicholas Haynes be hereby recognized and congratulated on his achieved rank of Eagle Scout. Good job, Sean. And next up, I think I got the right order. Sean Gregory Theoclitus. Where are you, Sean? Come on up. Whereas the Boy Scouts of America is a volunteer organization as one of the nation's largest and most prominent values-based youth development organizations, and whereas Sean Gregory Theoclitus has achieved the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout due to his dedication and volunteerism in his community, Troop 59 of the Boy Scouts of America, Millington, New Jersey, has asked Long Hill Township to join them in recognizing his numerous achievements. And whereas Sean Gregory Theoclitus has demonstrated the spirit of volunteerism through his Eagle Scout project of designing, fundraising, building, and supervising a memorial wall around a large cross at the St. Vincent de Paul Roman Catholic Church Cemetery, Sterling. And whereas Sean Gregory Theoclitus is a senior at Seton Hall Preparatory School and has been recognized for his academic excellence and will be continuing his education in architectural engineering. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Long Hill in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, and on behalf of the residents of Long Hill Township on February 22nd, 2017, that Sean Gregory Theoclitus be hereby recognized and congratulated on his achieved rank of Eagle Scout. Congratulations. And lastly, Jonathan Stewart Solden. Whereas the Boy Scouts of America is a volunteer organization and is one of the nation's largest and most prominent values-based youth development organizations, and whereas Jonathan Stewart Solden has achieved the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout due to his dedication and volunteerism in his community, Troop 59 of the Boy Scouts of America, Millington, New Jersey, has asked Long Hill Township to join them in recognizing his numerous achievements. And whereas Jonathan Stewart Solden has demonstrated the spirit of volunteerism through his Eagle Scout project of designing and building an Our Lady of Fatima meditation tableau at St. Vincent de Paul Roman Catholic Church, Sterling. Jonathan rescued cemetery statues from a convent that was closing and designed, fundraised, and supervised 20 workers to build the tableau at St. Vincent's. And whereas Jonathan Stewart Solden is a senior at Watchung Hills Regional High School and has been recognized for his academic excellence and will be continuing his education to study STEM and physics. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and the Township Committee of the Township of Long Hill in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, and on behalf of the residents of Long Hill Township on February 22nd, 2017, that Jonathan Stewart Solden be hereby recognized and congratulated on his achieved rank of Eagle Scout.
Congratulations.
You want to get a picture of all three scouts?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
why don't I get all three of you up?
That way Alex can...
Put in a big one.
No, but you get to roll with all three.
I got one outside.
Okay.
Okay.
You got one, good? You got one? Good, yep. Wow, they're staying.
Uh-oh.
That's right. All right. We have a presentation from Judy Carbone, Watchung Hills Municipal Alliance, Stigma-Free Communities.
Hi.
Hi.
You know what? I have 5 minutes. Can I hand these out?
Sure.
Are you going to use the screen?
I think presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take one for the...
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Judy Carbone, and I just joined the Watchung Hills Regional Municipal Alliance this past year. And I also found out that this past year, Morris County freeholders passed a resolution that signifying Morris County as a stigma-free community, basically meaning their goal is to reduce stigma about mental illness or substance abuse disorders. And they asked all of the 39 towns within Morris County to join the initiative. Right now, about 10 have joined, and I wanted to ask Long Hill Township if they want to be the 11th township enrolling in the program. And it basically just means that, it says right on the packet, it's simple. They have a website. Everything's here in the packet. Basically, Morris County Stigma-Free Community Initiative is a county-wide program which aims to eradicate the stigma associated with mental illness and substance use disorders. We are dedicated to raising awareness of these illnesses by creating an environment where affected individuals are supported in their efforts to achieve wellness and recovery. We know that stigma is still prevalent. And I've seen what this town does when it comes together. I had a neighbor who's died suddenly with small children. I've heard of people, with cancer. This town is a very caring community, and we pull together. We do meal trains. But I would like this to be a place where also if someone has severe depression or an eating disorder, or a stay-at-home mom is an alcoholic struggling, or, some kid is wrapped up in pain pills. I want them to be able to be like, hey, I got a problem, and let's start a meal train for them, get them the information, whatever we need to do for this person, let's help them, with no questions asked. It's becoming, the opioid epidemic is an epidemic. Christie, calls it an epidemic. He's working very, very hard. He has a whole task force. New Jersey has that Good Samaritan law where you're not going to be, punished for reaching out to save help if you're, addicted to heroin. They're not going to throw you in jail. They're going to get you help. So, it's all across the board. Just recently over in England, Prince William, he's doing a lot of stuff to help raise awareness and decrease stigma around mental illness out there, because suicide is like the top killer of young men in England. Not car accidents, not cancer, it's suicide. So, everyone around the country is obviously trying to make, their areas stigma-free or less stigma. Basically, just so that the people will go out there and ask for help, and it benefits everyone, because if they're getting help, their children are better for it, the community's better for it, crime rate goes down, whatever is involved is involved. But I can tell you a quick personal story. I'm in recovery from both alcoholism and eating disorder, and around 40 years old, way into recovery, years of recovery, I went out to my hometown, and we had a softball game for a woman that was struggling with breast cancer. And the whole town up in Bergen County rallied together, and they threw on a softball game for this woman. They raised money. They had a bake sale. They had a 50-50. They were all wearing pink shirts. There was a newspaper article, and they're all raising money for her treatment. And then later that evening, I went out to dinner with my family. And there was someone with celiac disease who ordered a special meal. There was someone with diabetes who ordered a special meal. And they came to me, and I said, I ordered my meal without butter or oil. And basically what happened was the meal came back swimming in butter and oil. The person with celiac disease had this beautiful grilled piece of chicken. The person with diabetes had this beautiful piece of salmon with nothing on it, and here mine is swimming in butter and oil. And I'm like, they can stand up for what they need for their health without thinking a second thing. What am I going to do? Say, excuse me, I can't eat this, because if I do, I'm going to go throw it up. Could you imagine the look on the waiter's face? Or anybody else at the table? You can't, it's just, these are things that are just not talked about. And I went out in my car at 40 years old, and I just cried. Because I could never, sorry, I get emotional. I could never imagine people in my town rallying together saying, let's go send Judy to rehab. She hasn't been able to work for 3 years. She's complete alcoholic. She cannot function. Let's get this girl help. Let's have a softball game. Let's all wear t-shirts. Could you even imagine? No, it would never happen. It's all hush-hush. It's all, Judy's going to rehab. Don't tell anybody, Somebody's sick in the hospital. We send them flowers. What do I get, Maybe a card from my mom, because she loves me unconditionally. But besides that, it's all behind closed doors talked about. And it's got to end, because obviously, 12 years into recovery, I have a beautiful daughter. I volunteer, I do things. I'm obviously very healthy. I can contribute as much to society as anyone else. And it is a disease, and I know that because I went through it. I never thought I'd become an alcoholic, ever. That was the last thing on my mind. It wasn't in my family. I also thought an alcoholic was someone under a bridge with a bottle in a paper bag.
Judy, can I ask you a question? And thank you very much for coming
Yeah.
in and bringing this, and clearly you put your heart and soul into this idea. So if a town declares itself a stigma-free municipality, are there requirements? Because I see a checklist at the end, but I think it says suggested action plan.
They are suggested, and basically, because I am passionate about it, and sorry for getting on a rant, but
That's okay.
one thing that I am doing through the Alliance is we're showing the film Anonymous People on April 3rd at the high school. And it's about the 23 million people walking around in long-term recovery from substance abuse or alcoholism. And it focuses on recovery and decreasing the stigma.
What was the date on that?
What's that?
I'm sorry, what was the date on that?
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
At the high school. I have flyers for that as well. But I could use this, since it's already set up, this event, to sort of kick off the whole stigma-free initiative if Long Hill chooses, to join and get put on the map of towns that have joined. And basically, there are a lot of suggestions, and we would need someone to sort of spearhead it. At this event, I could put out like a volunteer sign-up list if anybody's interested. I'll be talking a little bit about the stigma-free initiative. If, we decide to go there, somebody could come and speak if they want to from here.
Also, on your checklist is a booth at townwide events. Well, April 23rd, we have the Sterling Street Fair,
Okay,
and you could talk to that guy right there about getting a booth.
okay.
And I know you're aware because we've discussed this. The county deputy, I guess it's deputy prosecutor,
Assistant prosecutor.
is coming in to give a presentation, not at a town meeting. I know we've talked about this, so you can kind of wrap that into this. So, and you gave a personal story. I appreciate it. Just yesterday, I received an email from a guy I worked with for 10 years. On Wall Street. I used to go on business trips with him all the time. He sent out a mass letter to all of his contacts. He's a recovering alcoholic. I had no idea. And he left Wall Street to open, he's doing better, to open up a rehab center up in Bergen County someplace. So I applaud you and I applaud my friend because I think you're coming forward now. I think society is trying. So, I mean, I'd like to support what you're suggesting. I don't want to obligate the town in any way other than what you're suggesting. Not that I don't think we should do it, but we need to know more about what we're doing. You said 11 towns? 11 towns in Morris County?
So far, there's 10, I believe.
In Morris County?
In Morris County. There's 39 altogether. So far, 10 have actually
Do you know any of the
sent out a
towns?
resolution. It's Denville, East Hanover, Boonton, Hanover, Jefferson, Madison, Morris Plains, Morris Township, Rockaway Borough, Rockaway Township.
We know,
And
between us, we
Chatham
know all the mayors,
Chatham
elected
just-
officials. So, I mean, these are people we can bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, they have a whole website which lists resources, information, and a calendar of upcoming events.
That's the website you have right on the bottom of the first page.
Yes.
Look, I think it's wonderful. I thank you and I applaud you for what you're doing. Mayor, I don't know how you wanted to read this part of it, but as long as we don't have to make a financial commitment without researching it more, I'd like to recommend that we support this and
There's a
become...
resolution in the packet at page 5.
Yes, there-
And really all it says is that you support the county's efforts.
Yep. It's basically, just,
Page 5?
I mean, what it means really just depends on
There are different
how much
versions.
volunteers we can
No,
get.
no, of this.
Oh, in that package.
The packet she handed out.
Oh, I apologize, Judy. Oh, so it's a
So, yeah, there's a
suggested.
sample.
Right, there's a
Have
sample.
you read it? And are you comfortable?
99% of it's preamble. The resolution itself just says that, resolve that Long Hill Township recognizes the community needs and supports the efforts of the County of Morris in designating Long Hill Township as a stigma-free community.
And you don't have a problem with it in terms of...
It's not making any commitments.
Then I would make a motion...
If I could interrupt before you go down that path, perhaps we could get the language to our format, and Guy, if you could get some feedback from maybe some of these other towns, and we can put it on to the next agenda and talk about it and understand what we're getting into.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I
Okay.
think it's a great
That makes
call.
sense.
This way we'll have it on the agenda. We've got something to
I'll
work
call a
with.
couple of the... Judy, can you send me an email with the towns? I guess I can get it from the county, but not for any other reason other than those are the people that Bruce just suggested that we reach out to. So Tom Andes in Denville, Frank Drutzel in Morris Plains.
Yeah.
I'll just ask them what they've done.
Yeah, and I have a quote
That's fair.
from Mayor Russell. It's our hope and commitment to make a difference in our community by fighting the stigma related to substance abuse and mental health. If we made a difference in at least one person's life, we've done a good job. Like, they're basically, yeah, just recognizing and saying, they'll support and then if we throw together a few volunteers and what they can do, they do. But like you said, put up a table, or I'm having the anonymous people viewing, so things like this that knock out opiate abuse day we did last year, which was very successful. We had like a week to plan for it. So little things like this, if we can just get going throughout the year.
And to your point, we've learned ourselves and been grateful for it. Anytime we've asked for volunteers in this town, a ton of people raise their hand. And by doing this, I think, to your point, people will come forward who never felt they had somebody to talk to. So I think it's a great idea, and we'll do it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
All right. So next up, we have another presentation from Stephanie Cuthbert. Did I get that right? From Remington Vernick Engineering. They are the firm who did the recent analysis of the wastewater plant valuation and 20-year capital plan with the two components. So
Yes. And I am going to use the screen, sorry.
you're going to use the
Yes.
screen. Okay, so we're going to go grab the other side.
There's your answer.
We're going to go grab a chair.
No idea. I travel with them. I am.
Yeah, because I have to make sure my things are recording. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Well, first, thank you to Mayor and Committee for having me here tonight to go over the reports that we did. Just a little bit about who I am. Stephanie Cuthbert, I'm with Remington and Vernick. I've been with the firm for 23 years now in the water and wastewater field. And over the past few years, we've done numerous of these studies, the asset inventories, capital improvement plans, and valuations of systems. And people have done it for various reasons. Some have considered selling their system, and some have just used it as an inventory of their system, see what kind of condition it is, and to develop a 20-year capital improvement plan so you can budget out over the years. So we were hired at the end of 2016 to do these studies for a potential sale. So you can see what kind of condition your system is in, and if you did sell, see what the value of the system is. And what we did is we went through each of your facilities. So every pump station we went to, the wastewater treatment plant we went to, and we brought a team of engineers. So we brought mechanical engineers, we brought electrical engineers, structural engineers, and we looked at every element of your system. We looked at the roofs, we looked at the structure of the building, and we did an assessment of it, and we did an inventory, and that's that large document that you all have. And as you'll see, we went through each site and did a detailed inventory of it. We also reviewed historic records. We interviewed your operator. And we looked at how the system was maintained and how it was operated. Do you replace the pumps on a routine basis, or are you more reactionary utility where if something fails and you come in and you replace it? And we also looked at your financial records, not only to help with the valuation, but to see what improvements you've done recently. And I actually read all of your meeting minutes that were available, so. So just a quick overview of what your system includes. And I know that you've done a lot of studies in the past few years, so you've probably heard some of this. But what we saw as we were going through the facilities and the records is that most of your system is on public sewer. You do have about 12% of your residents which are still on septic. And in those areas, you don't have any infrastructure going to them, which is why they're on septic. You have 54 miles of sanitary gravity main, which is a lot of gravity main, and 3 miles of force main. What force main is that's the pipe that comes out of the pump station. So it's differentiated between the gravity main and the force main. So you have a lot of pipe in the ground. And most of your development occurred at the time of the original plant construction, which was 1930. So a lot of your influx of development was in the 1930s, 1940s, and then again in the 1970s, which also correlates to one of your water treatment or your wastewater treatment plant expansions. And what your pipe is it's older material. It's ACP and vitrified clay pipe. Those types of materials aren't used anymore in construction. Reason for that is they're brittle, they're prone to cracking, and the joints of them have a tendency to allow roots to get into them. Infiltration, you're going to hear a lot of terms tonight calling I&I. It's inflow and infiltration. It's the groundwater making its way into the pipe and being conveyed to the pump stations and the wastewater treatment plant. And it's also some pumps connected to the sanitary system. The sanitary system is not designed to carry that flow, so it stretches the pipe, it stretches your pump stations, and it also stresses the wastewater treatment plant. You have 8 pump stations. Those are in the low areas of town, so sewage usually flows by gravity till it can't flow by gravity anymore, and then it's pumped to the next spot in the system, and eventually makes its way to the wastewater treatment plant, where it's treated, and then it's disposed of. You have a wastewater treatment plant. I don't want to say it's unusual, but a lot of municipalities don't have their own treatment plants. Typically, they go to a regional treatment facility for the disposal of their wastewater. So you guys actually have a wastewater treatment plant, which was originally constructed in 1930, and it has gone through various expansions. When a treatment plant is designed, it's designed for a certain flow to come to it based upon the area. Your treatment plant is designed for 0.9 MGD, million gallons per day. Currently, you exceed that. A lot of that has to do with your just typical flows, but during rain events, when you get all of that I&I into the system, you greatly exceed it. So you spike during rain events. And the treatment plant, while it's performing during those high rain events, it does have operational issues with keeping up with that flow. And you guys have been looking at this for some time, and you entered into a voluntary sewer ban, and you examine your connections to the sanitary system on a case-by-case basis. And essentially what that is doing is inhibiting your development. So what were our overall observations of your utility system? From the studies that you've done in the past few years, it seems like you guys are at a crossroads in terms of how to deal with the wastewater treatment plant, getting the capacity and allowing more flow. And you've done a lot of I&I studies, tried to identify those areas of the system where you have the greatest amount of inflow and infiltration, that extra flow into the pipes during rain events. Your pump stations, you've done work to your pump stations. You guys have absolutely spent some money in the past few years in terms of upgrading your wastewater treatment plant, upgrading some of your pump stations, but some of them need to be reconstructed altogether. Some of them have some of the original equipment in it, original structures, and we've incorporated that into the 20-year capital improvement plan. With respect to your below-grade infrastructure, which is your gravity mains and your force main, that's part of the utility which often goes overlooked by almost every municipality. It's sort of the out of sight, out of mind. So everybody's below-grade infrastructure is really getting to the point where it's aging, and you guys are somewhat in the same situation. So our second objective, after we went through each of the facilities, did our assessment, was to come up with a 20-year capital improvement plan. The reason why we chose a 20-year span is because that is usually the life cycle for some of the equipment to be installed and to go through its typical lifespan. So it'll give you one rotation of equipment. One thing to note is that at the end of the 20 years, your improvements don't stop. It's just the planning period that we selected for an analysis. So after the end of 20 years, you're still going to have replacement of equipment, replacement of materials. It's just we wanted to examine the 20-year period. And like I said before, this can be used to establish a budget if you choose not to sell, establish a budget moving forward, so you can plan out the systematic replacement of the materials and equipment. So what the 20-year capital improvement includes is, first, the immediate deficiencies that need to be addressed. You have some facilities where you don't have backflow preventers, you don't have grinders into the pump station, so those were the immediate deficiencies. But then there's also the routine replacement and maintenance. The pumps typically have a 10-year life cycle. So in the 20-year capital improvement plan, we made sure that we included a pump replacement where it needed to be included, so that you can examine them and plan for them rather than reacting to them and having some issues with your system. And we also looked at your below-grade infrastructure, and we established a plan for you to begin to systematically either line or replace your sanitary system in prioritized areas. So those areas which you've identified as having the greatest amount of I&I, those are the areas that we identified for you to replace over the next 20 years. And we were very conservative with our replacement schedule. We have you replacing 1.25% of your gravity main or lining it each year, which is a very minimal amount when you consider you have 54 miles of gravity main. So what this equated to, when we looked at the annual cost for setting aside money for your pump station improvements and your wastewater treatment plant, it's about $547,000 a year. And then if you look at that systematic 1.25% each year for your sanitary lining or replacement, it comes to $813,000. So each year we're estimating about $1.4 million. Keep in mind this does not include any of the infrastructure you would need to bring if your septic systems start failing and you want to have those people connect to the public sewer. Also, at the wastewater treatment plant, you have certain limitations that will be coming up. You have a question?
No.
I was mentioning to my finance committee patriot over here. That's in addition to the roughly 1.5 or 1.6 million we spent per year operation.
Yes, that's in addition. This does not include any of the operation. Oh, sorry. So the question was, does this include the normal operation costs, salaries, insurance, that type of thing? It does not. This is just for the utility improvements. What it also doesn't include is the infrastructure going to the septic areas. And also your wastewater treatment plant is currently looking at some limit changes. When the wastewater treatment plant treats the sanitary, it has to treat it to a certain level, and you are required to meet those limits of copper, fecal, those type of things. And based upon where you discharge, you're currently looking at some very restrictive limits for phosphorus, copper. So none of these costs, the 1.4, include any of the improvements to the treatment plant to treat for those. Yeah.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Finance risk kids we've got here.
Yes.
And you, at some point, do we have an idea what that, we already know what the 1.6 costs.
Basically
So,
double.
right, so I don't know what that is, so
Basically double rate.
every year,
Every week.
which is a little higher than.
1.63.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this? So essentially, the 20-year capital improvement plan, if you keep the system, is a planning tool. So as you go through each year, re-examine it, but it'll start you thinking about in terms of planning for expenditures and sustaining your utility. After we did the assessment and the capital improvement plan, we were asked to put a value on the system. So if the system is going to be sold, what can the township expect in terms of a price that is bid by the private utility companies? So what we did is we went through and we itemized every piece of equipment and material in the system. We outlined every piece of pipe, every manhole, every structure at the wastewater treatment plant, and we used a method which the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, approves, because if the system does sell, then the private utility will use this valuation. This is the valuation that is approved by the BPU, and it's called a original cost less depreciation method. And what you do is you take the original cost that the piece of pipe cost to put in the ground. If it was put in 1930, what was the cost then? And if it was put in 2014, what was the cost to put in that same pipe in 2014? And the infrastructure is like a car. It depreciates. As soon as it's installed, it begins depreciating. And certain pieces of equipment have a longer lifespan than others. Like pipe is estimated to have a useful life of 100 years. So obviously that depreciates slower than a pump, which has a lifespan of 10 years. So what we did is we itemized when each piece of pipe, each equipment was put in to the system, and then we depreciated based upon the year it was put in. And what that came out to be is once you do the original cost less depreciation, we have an estimated value on the system of $24.9 million. Keep in mind that if a private utility bids, they may bid less or they may bid more. Right now, it is a seller's market. A lot of private utilities are looking to buy, so this might actually be more on the reality side than the high side. And that's actually all we have, unless there's any questions. Yeah.
You're staying, right?
I'm staying, yes.
So typically, and as we walk up.
Do you want to
when-
take
when-
this up?
I know you've worked over towns, Hatfield being one. How many bidders have you seen come in? Hatfield, I know was part of Edwards.
Yeah, they don't care, water company will always, so you see two or three.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
So you have a choice.
Yes.
I don't know how many companies actually work in New Jersey.
Yeah,
There's at least 4.
yeah, and,
Is there more than 4? I didn't, or are there more than 4?
there are more than 4, but most.
Typically, it's 3 or 4.
Yeah, you can get, you know, American Water.
And the American United. I didn't know that.
So,
Your water is supplied by American Water right now.
Yes.
So they would probably be the hungriest in terms of purchasing if you decide to go that route, just because they're already in town. They're local. One thing is that, we have been involved with other municipalities when they sold. I was actually the water and sewer engineer for Haddonfield when they sold, so I was involved with that. I was also a Haddonfield resident, so I got to vote as well. So I'm no longer their water and sewer engineer, obviously. But, if you go through the RFP process, you can put the RFP out there and just to see what pricing you get. You're not obligated to select any of them.
I know unfortunately, we'll probably bounce around a little bit.
Yeah.
My question is regarding the 12% of town that is septic.
Yes.
I don't know if it's urban legend or true. There are certain sections of town that I'm told will not be receptive to, or whatever that, it's not viable to put in the sewer, whereas some can. Did you identify the parts of town that can be sewered as opposed to the properties that cannot?
We identify the areas of town which don't have infrastructure. So in terms of doing analysis, why they can't, I don't know why they couldn't. You could always put in a pump station and pump it up.
I think it was like
Yeah.
a section of Long Hill Road is very rocky and it's uphill or something.
It would be
like that.
difficult to install with all the rock. Yeah, that could be viable. I mean, you can always dig through the rock with a rock trencher, but it may be cost prohibitive.
But that, I assume that the companies, if we were to put in requirement is to add sewer infrastructure where it's currently septic, they'll probably build that into their bid.
That's actually a very good point. So talking about RFPs, and I know we're jumping all the way ahead, but the RFP is yours. So you can put in a condition, anything that you want. I have seen conditions in there that you hold rates. They hold the rates for 4 or 5 years. I've seen conditions where if they come in and do utility improvements, they just can't repair the trench. They have to pave curb to curb. So not only are you getting a new road, but you're getting new infrastructure. I've seen, discounts for senior citizens. You name it, I've seen it in there. So the RFP is yours. You just have to keep in mind that 24.9, every condition you put on, it comes down a little bit.
So you mentioned holding rates 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Did you also do a rate analysis as to what our rates are compared to some of the across the state averages might be?
I did not, but I could quickly do that. Yeah, I could look to see what your rates. As I recall, just looking at them, I think they might be right in the middle, but I can confirm that.
I just have one question in regard to the infrastructure within the entire state of New Jersey, all the municipalities. Can you make an estimation as to how current we are compared to everybody else? Are we behind everybody else in kind of where we are as far as having to make repairs and do this, that, and the next thing compared to the rest of the towns, or is everybody kind of in the same position?
I think with respect to the below grade infrastructure, the piping, I think everybody's sort of in the same position. Everybody hasn't dealt with it unless it breaks, and then you deal with it. It's just out of sight, out of mind. You guys are a little bit more unique because you have the high I&I, and also you have a wastewater treatment plant. That is a big ticket item. I mean, that's expensive equipment in there. It's constantly running. You constantly have to update it. You constantly have to adhere to the DEP limits. You have new limitations which may be imposed. So that is actually a big chunk right there of what you need to focus on in terms of your utility.
If I could take you back to the I&I for a second.
Yes.
We, a couple of years ago, started a major effort to identify and repair a lot of that I&I. Do we still have a large I&I problem?
You did. So you, as I understand it, you did about 14,000 feet of lining, and you did various manholes. You put on flood manholes so that during the flooding it didn't get into the manholes. But you still have 54 miles. You still have...
How many miles have we done?
14,000
feet.
feet.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
So 3 miles.
because,
Not even 3 miles.
not even.
Miles, 5,
It's a third of a mile.
yeah.
because I remember...
Am I doing the math right?
It's less than 3 miles.
Less than 3 miles.
Okay, oh, that's right. So we've done 3 miles, and we have how many miles?
54.
Yeah, I mean, Guy, if you remember at the time, we were going to put $1 million every year into...
Yeah.
And we stopped doing it. We kind of put a freeze on it because of this.
Fair enough.
And it sounds, based upon this study, which was completely separate from the other study, right, you're saying we need to do 893,000 or whatever it was per year. So our million number was kind of spot on with a long-range 20-year plan. So let me ask the question. With your 20-year capital plan, your best guesstimate of how many years from now would we be able to get ourselves out of the sewer ban, if at all, if we started following that 20-year plan to the letter?
To the letter. Well, let's see, if you're doing 1.25%, so I'd say a handful of years. So you did a study in terms of various options, in terms of making improvements to the treatment plant versus addressing your I&I. And there was some table with respect to if you reduce it 25%, if you reduce the I&I 50%, what would you have to do to the plant, and there was a cost estimate. So we actually included that verbiage in our report. We also looked at it from another standpoint in terms of you have aging infrastructure, you have aging underground pipe. So not only did we view it as addressing the I&I, but we viewed it as addressing your aging infrastructure as well. So you would probably have to increase that 1.25% to more if you wanted to make substantial gains in a short period of time.
When you say a handful of years, and I'm not going to hold you
Yeah,
to
I
it,
know.
throw out a number. Is it 5 years? Is it, in
How
my
about
lifetime?
Between 5 to 10. And I can't predict in terms
That's fair.
of...
And
I mean, I can't imagine, just thinking about the numbers, I can't imagine that 6% is going to make enough of a dent into the I&I that we'd get lifted out of the sewer bin.
Yeah.
3% didn't do much.
Right. Right, 3% didn't do a lot.
Yeah.
And if we would hasten or quicken, that 1.4 total becomes 1.8.
And remember, as you take the low-hanging fruit on I&I, the returns diminish. Right, year 4, you're not, you may be doing, 1.1% linear feet, but that might now only represent 0.5% of I&I, right? Because they're not leaking as bad as the other ones that you've already done, which is what, I think Sterling, downtown Sterling was the worst area, which is what we went after with the 14,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
And keep in mind, you're talking 1.4 million on top of our current budget, which is about $1.5 million, $1.6 million.
My financial whiz kid mentioned that back there, and being very good at math, or so. If you double the amount we have to spend annually, does that mean the sewer rate doubles?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Every year?
But
So the way we've currently been operating for about the past, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years, is by and large, the sewer system is a self-sustaining entity. We have a good idea of what our expenses are in terms of salary, electricity, debt load, materials, chemicals, whatever. And we attempt to collect that amount per year in revenue. And that number last year was 1.49 million-ish, give or take. So now you're talking about spending another 1.43. If you do that every year, you basically, what would happen if we started this year, the rate would double, and it would stay double for 20 years.
Double what it currently is.
Double what it currently is.
With no, end in sight because that 20-year capital plan would just roll into another 20-year.
Correct.
capital plan.
It doesn't, it wouldn't keep cascading other than cost of inflation, right? I mean, right, and we're just dealing with constant numbers here. So it would double next year, and it would stay that way.
It would stay at
For
that
20
level
years.
for 20 years, yeah. Now, you take a hit, the 50, you
So
a
if somebody's
double, and then
paying
it would be
500
constant.
I honestly, I'm on septic, but if somebody's paying, I don't know what an average home pays in sewer tax
Now,
now.
I pay $700 a year.
So yours would immediately become 1,400.
Correct.
And then for the next 20 years.
It would be 1,400
Plus.
Yeah.
plus a little bit.
Plus whatever the
plus
inflation. Yeah. Now, there's one question, I don't know whether you can actually answer this, and I don't even know if I can ask it kind of delicately, but the number that you've given is there for the yearly expense.
Yes.
Is that a number that you feel is absolutely firm, or is there some wiggle room? Is there padding in there? If you could just give me a little bit of color on how realistic that number is.
Okay, so if you look at the capital improvement plan for each item we listed, we actually used construction costs for that. We did plan out the pump replacement, so we used typical replacement costs for a pump. You may be able to get a year or two more out of it, so we're not saying just go and replace it because it's 10 years old. We're saying plan for it and adjust the capital improvement plan each year. You do have a little bit of wiggle room, but I don't think you're dropping down to 500,000. You may drop down to 900, a million.
Right.
You know, you might float around that.
Well, the I&I is a fairly constant number, and that's a bulk of it, right? So if memory serves, you said 500 and something thousand on capital?
Yes.
Okay, so we are spending today roughly 150,000 on capital improvement as part of a budget item that's paid for by sewer plant revenue. So, I mean, if you wanted to do it by the book, we're talking about increasing that fourfold. If you wanted to take a more conservative approach, like a 20-year roof, might go 25 years, depending upon the weather, that type of stuff, right? Don't repave the road until you see the cracks forming. 450 a year, so you're talking tripling,
Right.
right? But,
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's
the bulk of the number is still the $890,000 on I&I, I think.
Yeah.
You're right. That's the larger cost
Yeah.
out of it.
So question for you, so us as a small town with the I&I, right, we have to go out every year, we have to get engineers to give us a design, we have to contract out doing I&I remediation, you're saying 1%, so we're talking, what, about 2/3 of a mile, right? How much are we paying per linear foot
You mean,
for,
what do we,
for I&I versus what if a private entity bought it and they do 100 miles a year across the state, what do they pay per linear foot? Like, should we expect that they can get a significant savings on that expense?
okay, so a couple things with that. One, they're going to be motivated to do like pipe work because they have this thing called DISIC project. And every year they go to the BPU and they get these projects approved. And it's all for the infrastructure. It's for pipe, it's for laterals, that type of thing. And the BPU is using that as an incentive to get them to invest in the infrastructure below grade. And what a DISIC project is, it's a improvement system. I forget what it stands for, but those are projects which they can immediately start getting returns on. They don't have to wait for a rate case hearing, which comes every 2 years or so. They can immediately start gaining. So they have incentive to do the pipe replacement. With respect to costs, they do so much pipe work that they buy the materials themselves for their contractors. So something that would cost a municipality, and I'm just throwing out numbers, $150 a foot, they can do it for $100 because they buy so much pipe that they get the pipe for a reduced cost.
Matt, you're awfully quiet.
I have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
It's a lot of conversation. It
Well,
is.
fortunately, I mean, we're very fortunate because of your own history. Not only are you an expert in what we are discussing, you also lived it, because as a resident in Haddonfield, and as the
Engineer, yeah.
engineer in Haddonfield, I mean, you've seen every aspect of it.
Oh, it's a very emotional topic for residents. I mean, it was emotional for me. 'Cause,
Wastewater treatment plants are an emotional.
ownership of a utility. Because, I was their engineer in Haddonfield, and I thought, we can do this. We're spending money, but we know what the problems are. We can address it. And I wasn't for it. And we started looking at financials, and
Well, and that's, I was just going to say, trust me, when emotion gets involved, that quickly dissipates when we find out that we're talking about doubling.
The budget, yeah.
Right.
Doubling your sewer bill overnight.
Right.
Yeah, what have your rates changed since they switched over?
Well,
in
they
your
were on a
town?
freeze. So they were on a freeze, so we're still in the freeze, so our rates have not changed.
So
How long's that freeze, as far as you know, how long does that freeze last for in your contract?
That was for 3 years with them, so it's just about up.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the mayor told me the agreed for the year 3 to year 5, it would maximum of 6% increase. Was that?
And just, that I'm not aware of, but just keep in mind that the BPU governs everything they do. So, there's some positives and some negatives about going private. One of the negatives is, yes, you do lose control, but they don't have free reign to just run wild. They are governed by the BPU, and the BPU is a consumer advocacy, and they're not going to allow them to come in and just raise rates as high as they want to. They are governed by them.
And the one question I have there is, if every municipality in the state is having to say we're all in the same condition, we'll have to do something soon, then everybody's going to be coming, and it's a powerful argument to the BPU to raise rates, really kind of raise them as much as is required for the job. And so I'm really wondering if we have a freeze rate, if we freeze rates for 5 years, say, once that 5th year comes in, we're kind of at the mercy of the BPU, and things are completely out of our control at that point, and that we could see very significant increases because we don't have the rate base that we're thinking about right now. That's statewide. Everybody's in the same position. Everybody's needing to get it done.
If you decide to move forward, one of the private utilities will probably come in and speak to you, and they will tell you, and I've sat in meetings where they've said this straight out, that the BPU does not allow them just to jump up the rate, that the goal is to get everybody in the state to the same rate, but they don't, if there's a discrepancy in your current rates, and this is the state rate, they just don't allow them to immediately go up like that. So I don't think that the BPU would allow that big jump. They're going to control the increase.
Well, I think it would certainly help us to have a rate analysis to know where we stand in terms of how our rates compare. Can I take you back to something you said during the presentation? You mentioned that we need $1 million for investment over 20 years to meet that capital plan, but that does not include some other things that you mentioned to meet the wastewater requirements that are coming out of the DEP. Do we have an idea of what those investments are that we're looking at over the next 5 years or so?
One of the reports, your former report, did outline that. In treatment for these limits, the phosphorus, the copper, the zinc limit, they were talking about chemical addition to sort of precipitate out those elements and settle them out so they don't get discharged with the treated water into the water body. From what was in the report, I can tell you that the phosphorus limit is pretty intense. It's less than 1, which I was involved with the wastewater treatment plant, and that's a pretty restrictive limit.
That is irrelevant to me. I mean,
I know.
less than
I know.
1 is like,
I know.
okay.
That's what
What does that mean?
It means you're going to, if that is the limit that it's imposed to you, you have a very restrictive, tough limit to beat.
What are we at now?
I don't know what your limit is right now.
So what would the cost be to come up to those standards? Do you know?
And like I said, I think that report details in it. I I guess my point is I dealt with a wastewater treatment plant that was looking at a 1 limit, and we tried different pilot tests to see how we could treat for that, and it wasn't by chemical addition only. There was going to have to be an additional type of treatment process to assist with that.
So on top of the 1.4 investment, there's some other investment that's required?
There's some other investment.
And Neil, do we know what some of those investments are? She mentions another report. Do we have that
As
information
far
somewhere?
as what the upgrades from the,
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know whether you put that in the report. You might have had that, but I don't know whether you
Okay,
included it or not.
I don't
I'll
remember.
search out that report.
Yeah, I don't think it was in there because they're not here yet, so you're kind of trying to...
Oh, we're predicting something that's unknown.
You're predicting an
Yeah,
unknown.
but let's put it into something I think we all can understand. We already agreed that it's doubling the rate overnight.
Without.
So it's doubling.
Without. It's double plus.
We know it's a doubling plus. We just don't know what that
Yeah,
plus
you don't.
is.
Right.
Okay, so my other question was then, so now we're taking out more of this stuff, phosphorus and whatnot. What do we do with it? What happens to it?
It settles it out. It settles, and you get sludge. Right now, your treatment process, every treatment process gets sludge anyway, and you dispose of it. You're going to get more sludge to dispose of, so your disposal costs will increase.
Okay. We don't have to create like a Yucca Mountain anywhere to...
No, not yet.
No, but you probably will have to pay extra for the sludge removal
Yeah.
because now it's going to be laced with phosphorus and copper and zinc and all the other goodies that they're going to want to pull out of it.
And the volume is greater. The volume.
We could just dump it in Harding though, right?
Aren't you
I'm not gonna
like
answer
Great
that.
Swamp Water?
Yeah.
You had mentioned something about when the utilities do a capital improvement, that they don't have to go for approval or anything to the BPU. Does that imply that they can just tack a rate increase on when they...
No. It is already factored into their rate that you have. So those are projects that they can do, improve the system, and they don't have to wait 2 years to get the rate increased.
Okay. So as part of the existing rate, they have a committed capital investment
Right.
amount that
Right.
they need to make. Okay. Would that be something that they outline in a proposal?
You can ask them to commit to what their commitment over the next 5 years will be in terms of capital improvements. And this way you know that they're not going to come in, because a lot of people think they're going to come in, they're not going to make improvements and just let the system run down. It's not in their best interest to do that, so you can ask them to commit to a certain dollar amount each year.
And then that, of course, affects the bid, just like if we require them to sewer. Anything that can be sewered, they have to sewer it within X time.
Right. But also keep in mind that they're looking at the assessment report, and they're using that in their bid, and they're establishing what projects they're going to do. They're going to want to tour the facilities if you decide to sell. And they're going to have their team, and they're going to be looking at everything, and they're going to start checking off what they need to do.
I'm sure they're going to do the exact same thing you did. I mean, as far as providing sewer pipe to the 12% that doesn't have it, there is an offset to that we could require homes to connect.
Well, yes.
Or connect at some point.
Now, I spoke with the gentleman from one of the water companies, well, it's the water company we have here in town, and my immediate reaction before we had these numbers was, geez, I don't know if you ever want to require people to do it, because I thought it was like a $30,000 connection. And he said, I don't know where you got that number from, but he said it's like a $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 connection, and we can work it out where that homeowner can pay that off over 5 years. So it's a minimal increase. And I think, what else did he say? And I'm not this is not your area of expertise, but apparently there's data that says that a septic home that gets connected goes up in value 10 or 20%, depending. And if that's true, one, the homeowner's going to be thrilled. $3,000 is like a capital upgrade. And the town's going to be thrilled because those very homes are going to be revalued, and their taxes will go up. But that's happy days. Everybody wins. So, anyway.
Your taxes will go up.
Yeah, my taxes will go up because I'm a septic person, but as I've said many times, when I go to sleep at night, I pray for my daughter, I pray for my son, and I pray for my septic system.
In that order?
Yeah, well, it depends if I'm mad at my dog.
Sorry. I'm going to remind you to put the wife in there.
Oh, and my wife.
Any other?
Mayor, if I may, just because I did speak to the Wastewater Advisory Committee, and Stephanie, while you're here, and I provided to the committee a month or so ago the timeline, and you put some milestone dates. Could you just review that for the committee?
Yes, I don't have the exact dates in front of me, I'm sorry, but to get on the referendum for this year, you may think that even though it's February, that you have all the time in the world, but it's actually a tight time frame. The regulations for putting out an RFP and, advertising for it are pretty laid out. You have to advertise 6 different times, 1 week apart. So that right there takes up a chunk of time. Having public meetings on it, educating the public on it, that takes up time. So I did put together a timeline. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact dates, but...
I've got it in front of me.
Okay.
You want to?
Yeah, so we're at the submission of the value of system, which was February 15th. Tonight, I would consider would be our first public meeting on it. We then follow up with our March 8th meeting, where we have additional discussion on the matter. And the timeline was also a date, March 15th, for a special meeting for the public to discuss the sale. Not required, but if we really want to try to get the public input and be fully transparent, that's a suggestion. Then we're looking at April 12th for a resolution to be passed by the committee, authorizing the bids for the sale of the utility. And then, this is where I got a little confused, and Stephanie helped me clarify it. We have to advertise an RFP 6 separate times. It's not just...
1 week apart, you just...
1 week apart.
Right. So we start in April on the 24th, and we move through May 29th. The bid submissions would be due by June 6th. We would review and select the winning bid between June 6th and 13th. The committee would meet to introduce an ordinance to authorize execution of a sale contract with the successful respondent and placing the question on the November ballot for the sale on June 14th. June 21st, a special council meeting to take public comment regarding the ordinance. We would then come back and adopt the ordinance in July on the 19th. On August 8th, submission of contract award to the Office of State Controller, and then the deadline for submitting the question for the referendum would be April 18th. And then between September and October, and Stephanie and I talked about this prior to the meeting. I'm sorry, August 18th. These public meetings regarding the sale, we talked about what they did in Haddonfield, which were these living room meetings or these coffees where the committee and other representatives of the township would go into homes, talk to small groups, the 6 to 12 people, because, what we'd want to do is go out and, promote what we've approved here so that we get full participation in a referendum in November. And people were educated and knew how they wanted to vote. And I've talked to the mayor about this, talked to Stephanie earlier. Was it Westville had a referendum?
Yes, so...
It looked like they were on track. And at the 11th hour, there was a group that went out and, correct me if I'm wrong, but they spread misinformation and they just scared off the voters, and they went in there and they voted the referendum down strongly, right? I mean, that's what you said. So
yeah.
It's important to continue to sell it through the fall, based on what I heard this evening. And that's the timeline in a nutshell. So we're right there. We don't really have any wiggle room per se.
Well, to me, the thing we want to educate people on is if we don't move forward with this, their sewer bill is doubling.
Right. That's the other
At
side
least
of the coin.
doubling. I mean, so that's a pretty straightforward comment.
But the only one thing there, I'm not doubting that, but it's going to go up anyway, right?
What's that?
It is going to go up. Some even if we were to sell it, it is going to go up.
No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been going up.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not going to remain where it is right now.
No,
No matter what happens, we're going to have to do something.
I mean, clearly this is going to go into the RFP, right? And it's up for debate and comment and negotiation. But I mean, you figure 5% a year, 3% a year, some number is going to be a limit for a number of years.
For a number of years.
And then after that, and I guess it's 5 years that is about the limit you can lock them in for. I mean,
Westville asked for 5 and they got it, and that was never seen before. It was
okay,
usually...
so 5 is a stretch.
Yeah, 5
Okay.
is a stretch.
5 is a
5
stretch,
flat.
right.
So whatever Westville...
Oh, flat, okay, all right, yeah, I'm not even
pretty
thinking
sure
flat.
5% between after year 3 to year 5.
Okay.
So let's say it's 1% a year is what Haddonfield did. But to Brendan's point, there's no doubt it will start going up. But the BPU, right, unlike us, we're not controlled by the BPU. If all of a sudden we have a large capital expense, it's just going right into that sewer bill.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas the BPU, correct me if I'm wrong, much like they do with other utilities, it's spread out across the rate base.
Yes,
And
exactly.
therefore, there's just no way that it's going to go in year 6 another 95%. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I mean, I think there's viable proof of that, right? You get your water bill, you get your gas bill, you get your electric bill. They're all regulated by the BPU. And I've never seen a 15% increase
Yeah, but
from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely kind of open on this, but the one thing that just niggles at the back of my mind is the fact that for all those other utilities, they don't have the sort of imminent collapse potential, that we're facing with the infrastructure that we have like this statewide, and so. I think there's an argument that can be made potentially, and that you could see significant increases. I mean, and whether we do this or whether we don't,
Right. I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, it's just a matter of can they
do the math, right?
Can they do it for less than?
I mean, that's
No, I know, and that's what it comes down
Even if
to.
it went up 5% per year for 20 years to get to that 100%, the compounded involved with raising it immediately. It's like our rate would be like 200% when you do the compound interest on what the cost is when you raise it in year 1, as opposed to 5% a year.
Yeah.
And to your point, I don't think we've seen a 5% increase in any utility bill.
Well, I can tell you in Haddonfield, I live there, I have the engineer's perspective. American Water got the system. They've spent more than $1.4 million each year since they've gotten it. They are all over the place. They're currently doing 3 pump stations over. They're constantly out doing services over. So they've invested more than the 1.4.
And your original, as an expert in this area, your original feeling was, I don't like the idea of selling it.
I
And now
ended up voting yes.
But that's not
Not
what
at
you...
first, no. It's an emotional, you want to hold on to it. We can do this, but yeah.
It's like your first car, right? You never. I mean, you don't want to get rid of it, right? It costs you a fortune. The car's worth $500, but you got to sink $1,200 a year in maintenance in the car. Well, your car.
I don't want to draw a correlation here that may be offensive to anybody, but my first car was a piece of crap.
So was mine. And you kind of don't want to let go. I mean, but clearly we have to make a very well thought out choice, because if we do it, and if the referendum passes and the voters agree, you don't get it back. It's a permanent.
Mr. Mayor, if we could, we have a couple people
Yep,
that
yep.
wanted to opine on this. Could we open it up in here?
Yep, sure. Let's open it up to the public. Let a couple of people ask some questions. You're going to have to step away for a second if you could.
Stephanie, we will share this mic.
So, Chuck, are you a Michigan fan?
Yes. Anyway, Charles Aronowitz Millington, Stephanie, our expert. I've got 4 questions for you.
Yes.
They're long, and if you forget them, we'll rehash them.
Stephanie, you want to come up here and use one of these mics? Just have a seat over here.
All right. Given your expertise
Make sure the red light's on.
and taking the position of a taxpayer of Long Hill Township, your experience with Haddonfield, running the plant, engineering background, what's your recommendation to the Township Committee and to the taxpayers of Long Hill Township, given your evaluation of our sewer plant?
Okay, so if you read our report, there's not a recommendation in there. The reason being is, each municipality has to look at their own situation in terms of their budget, what they think that their residents will want to pay. So we don't make a recommendation in terms of
We're going to ask you tonight for your recommendation.
I don't think you're going to get an answer. No, I think that...
You don't have
The night's young. The night is young.
No, I think that, you have to look at the financials, you have to look at the rates, and each of you have to decide if you think that you want to hold on to this and pay the rates, and at the end of 20 years, it doesn't mean that the rates are going to go down. The system is going to be there for long term.
Okay. What did Haddonfield do with its asset value that they received? We're going to get maybe somewhere around 24. What did they do with that?
Well, the first thing that you're obligated to do, that you have to do, is pay down your debt for the utility, if I'm not mistaken. And then what Haddonfield did was they have a road program where they did an analysis of all their roads. And they made a decision years ago not to pave any roads if the utilities were bad. They wanted to address the utilities at the same time. Because they didn't want to
Get
come
rid of Sweeney tonight. Again.
They didn't want to have to come back and fix the utilities after they paid for repaving the road. So they established this list of roads that could be paved right now and roads that needed to have the utilities done before it could be paved. And they tried to do one road each year that didn't need utilities, and another road the same year that did need utilities. And they ran out of roads that didn't need utilities. So what happened was their road program sort of hit a stall because they couldn't afford to replace utilities. So once they paid down their debt, they have tripled the amount of roads they do each year for their road program. And what they have been doing is they've been coordinating with American Water. And American Water is working with them in terms of replacing the utilities in those roads, which the borough has determined as to be a hierarchy in terms of needing paving. They also work together in terms of the borough will pick up the paving of the road where they're working if they extend additional water main down. So they work hand in hand, but that's how they're spending their money.
Okay. Number 2.
Mm-hmm.
That was 3.
In your opinion, operationally, how is our sewer staff doing operationally? Are we an A? Are we a B? Are we a C? Are we a D? Are we an F? Are we an F minus?
I think I put in the report that, your operational staff is doing a fine job. I think that...
Give us a grade.
How about a C+?
Okay.
I think that... a lot of operators today are facing the same constraints, that they know what, needs to be done, but all the municipalities are constrained in terms of how much they can actually spend, so.
Okay. Should we, as a taxpayer and a township committee, be worried? I've been told that we're not approved a capacity by the DEP. We're behind. We're waiting for approval. Is that a big deal or something we should worry about?
The capacity of your treatment plant? Okay, so flow through a treatment plant is not a permitted number. So what the DEP is, you can actually We said that the plant was designed for 0.9 MGD. You can exceed that as long as you are treating and meeting your effluent limits. The problem is that when you have the high rain events that you're having, the plant is having a hard time through the operational aspects of it. So that's why you need to address it. You can't operate forever exceeding your flow. You're eventually going to have to address it, and that's what the committee's doing.
Okay, number 4. We're going to pay the, 5, whatever. We're going to pay the piper at some point, whether we're paying it now and starting and doubling for the next 20 years, or we write in the contract, oh, we're going to freeze rates for the next 5 years. If we're in this situation, we're going to eventually pay the piper, okay? So I have a hard time financially dealing with whether we defer it for 5 years and get a fixed rate for 5 years, and then year 6, 7, and 8, if we've got a problem that we need to spend double what we're spending now, when do we pay the piper?
I think that you pay the piper right now. I mean, I don't think I'm clear on your question.
All right, here's the question.
Yeah.
We're saying, well, we're going to sell the plant, we're going to get this operator in here, we're going to freeze our rates for 5 years, but we really know behind our minds we need to double our rates today, but we're going to freeze them for 5 years, and then at year 6, we're eventually going to have to pay for all this infrastructure and I, whatever we need to upgrade the plant. American Water, for example, is not going to absorb all that cost. We, as the taxpayers, are going to eventually pay. So pay me now, double or triple or whatever. I can't deal with when we're going to pay.
Okay, so I don't think I'm still sure.
All right, here's the deal.
Okay.
Here's the deal. We need $50 million to straighten everything out. Okay?
Yeah.
We're going to sell the plant. We're going to get $20 million, and we're going to freeze the rates for 5 years. Okay? At year 6, we still got to invest the $50 million. So whether we pay now double or 6, 7, and 8 triple, we're still paying the piper. So the question is, are we deferring payment, or is it just going to be equalized out? Help me understand when we're going to pay as a taxpayer to upgrade this plant and the infrastructure if we sell it.
So if you sell it, private utilities are there to make money. I mean,
Right.
But the thing is, they are controlled, and I think it was mentioned that they are like insurance. It's a cost that is a spread among all of their users. So the cost is somewhat spread out, so that you're not, all the residents of Long Hill aren't feeling that $50 million.
You know, Chuck, I'll give you an
Sure,
example.
go ahead.
East Rayburn, West Rayburn, when they had to come in, NJ American, because they own the water system here in town, it was $1 million. Did anybody see a big jump in their water bill? No. And the reason being, as Stephanie pointed out, that rate or that capital improvement was spread out across the entire rate base throughout the state. So we all chip in periodically because the capital costs are spread out amongst, 565 towns as opposed to one town. The difference here is we own the sewer system. So if there's an unexpected expense or an expected expense, which is $1.5 million, we know who's paying it. You and whoever else is watching. There's no BPU here to protect the taxpayer. You're going to pay.
My answer would be whichever is cheaper, right? Because I look at it and say there's $25 million of equity there. So is it cheaper for me to vote on this thing? Yes, because the money that the utility is going to pay us is going to be cheaper than the money I'm going to pay out of my pocket, right? Because they're going to increase their rates whenever it is, 3-5 years, and it's going to be X percent based on the BPU? Or is it cheaper for me to vote no and say, Long Hill, you keep it and manage the rates? So to me, it's really a question of which is cheaper. And without knowing a rate analysis, I don't really know what's cheaper. I don't know which one's which.
I think, Chuck, part of the idea on this also is that if you're saying it's going to cost us $50 million to do the work. That's not what it's going to cost a company like New Jersey American to do the work. It's going to cost them 30 or 35, right? So you're low because of their volume and their scale, right? We have to, you outlined in the thing, a roof needs to be replaced, right? We got to go hire a roofer. Okay, I guarantee you NJ American has a truck going out from building to building, week to week, putting a roof up, right? That go do that roof. We got to engineer it. We got to bid it, possibly, depending on the size, right? We have all these other things that we have to do that a company that does that doesn't. But yes, they do have the added, right? They want 10 to 12% on their capital. They want a rate of return. Right, so there is a profit margin that has to be built in. The question is the savings and the distribution across a wider rate base larger than the profit margin?
Yeah, okay. I appreciate your time and generate a couple more questions. How many towns, how many municipalities in the state own a plant like we do? Roughly.
From what I know,
you can give a percentage or a number?
oh no, it's a number. It's on one hand. Like I said, most go to a regional treatment plant.
Well, Warren has one. Berkeley Heights has one. Bernardsville has one.
Down near us, it's Millville, it's Woodstown. So to answer your question without numbers, it's...
Can we find out? And maybe that's a better
It's
way to
less of a percentage that own it than go to a regional sewage authority.
Yeah. Are people leaning towards selling their plant and going to a...
It goes in cycles. There was a cycle probably 15 years ago, and then with Haddonfield selling, it's on an upswing again. And what happens is the private utilities are looking to buy. Right now, they have the money to buy, and they want to buy. It's just a matter of who's going to be that person to sell and get the high price. Everybody thought it was going to be Westville, but that didn't work out. So it's just a matter of who's going to be the next person to get that high ticket.
Stephanie, thank you for your responses. Thank you.
So Chuck, I actually have two answers, or two comments about two of your questions. One was around what did Haddonfield do with the money? And one of the things that we have to do is pay down debt. We have about $4.5 million currently
sewer
today
debt or
for
other debt?
just for sewer debt, right? And that's the obligation to pay down. So, whatever number that, and let's just for argument's sake, let's just say the offer is $25 million, just because that's about what it's proposed, right? We have to pay down 4.5. We have $20 million to deal with. I mean, it's kind of weird having to say that. Our annual tax base is about 15.
Tax-free for a year?
That's municipal.
Nine and a half is revenue generated from taxes. And we're basically going to have $20 million in the bank. So one of the biggest concerns we have is what do we do with that?
Right. The municipal portion is $9.5 million. The local school is another $15 million.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the high school.
Right.
So.
I mean, our entire municipal operating budget for the year is about $15.5 million. So in theory, we could effectively charge no municipal tax for an entire year.
I'll stay another year with that.
Not that you would want to do that, right? Because that's other issues, but, you know, do you build a trust fund and feed the roads?
Right.
$500,000 every year?
Since
Do
you brought that up, I was going to ask Jack, can you do that?
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah, I didn't think you can.
We can't make a trust fund, like a transportation trust fund?
Like a lockbox?
I don't think we can.
Al Gore?
So
we can't-
clearly something to figure out, but, I mean, not to put the cart
Let's
before
worry
the
about
horse,
yes or
but-
no at this point.
Yeah, let's worry about what the offer is, first of all, because for all we know, they don't come in with an offer that we find
Actually,
acceptable.
then I do have a question for Stephanie. It's my understanding that, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen in this case, if a utility already owns one of, or in Haddonfield's case, as I understood it, Haddonfield was the hole in the donut. It was surrounded by NJ American Water-owned properties. In this case, we don't have that, but what we have is a utility that already owns one of the two. It may encourage them or incent them to make sure they're the winning bidder.
Yes, they're already in the area, so they already have staff in the area, and they're set to go. Like, Haddonfield just wasn't the donut. American Water had a connection into their system for emergencies.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they were ready to go. They actually made more connections, and they stopped using Haddonfield's wells altogether.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, this is sanitary, so it's a
And I
different
guess
situation.
it's public information.
Oh, yeah,
There wa-
absolutely.
There was,
Yes. Yeah.
there was the winning bid, which was NJ American Water, and there was a second bid.
Yes.
Do you remember, I think I know, but do you remember the spread between the bid that came in second?
I want to say it was still in the 20s. It wasn't, considering the price, it wasn't that big of a spread. It wasn't thousands of dollars, but it wasn't.
No, I mean the winning bid
Yes.
for the infrastructure.
And
And the second place bid, I thought were
Yeah.
millions apart.
Yeah, it wasn't, like, I didn't think it was extraordinarily, it wasn't half the price.
Well, we can,
Right.
you know what, that's another question, if you wouldn't mind finding out. It's-
Okay.
It's,
Yeah.
Mayor, you had a second comment.
Yes, so the second comment was you asked how we are doing today and the grading. So just to quantify that a little bit, because Stephanie did say about the commitment from the township. So her report outlines we should be spending about $550,000 a year in capital improvement. We've currently been spending about $150,000.
A little short.
We're a little short, which is, you know, again, part of the dilemma, and, you know, clearly we need to, if we don't do a sale, we have to take a look at bumping that number up, and that will affect rate structure and everything else.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome. Anyone else?
Dennis Sandow, Millington. I am concerned about the quality of education. You've talked on and off about educating the public, and yet the dialogue that I have heard tonight is so fraught with ignorance, guesswork, and flat-out impossible lies that if you guys set up the educational curriculum, you're going to mislead the public in ways that are so terribly embarrassing. Let's take a few of the things that I just made mental notes of. Houses on Long Hill Road are not sewered because there's a rocky undersurface. Answer, we'll just trench out the rocks. Oh, but who's going to trench across the rocks under the front lawn to get from the house down to the street? Or do the rocks end at the curb line? The private operator has a buying power, and instead of $100 a foot to put in pipe, he could probably do it, or instead of 150, he could do it for 100. Wait a minute. 90% of the cost of any job like putting in new sewer mains is labor. You got to haul the pipe to the site, you got to haul gravel to the site, you got to dig a hole, you got to put the pipe in, you got to backfill it, you got to tamp it, You got to repave it. 90% or more of your cost is labor. The material at best is 10% of a project like this. And if the buying power of the private utility allows you to save 30% of that, then your overall project saving is 3%, not 33%. We've overstated the potential saving by a factor of 10. Let's talk about the requiring people to hook up. A number was thrown out that we could charge people $30,000 to hook up. If you read the ordinance carefully...
I didn't say that. What I said was I thought it was a $30,000 cost. I was educated that it's somewhere between 2 and 4.
It's the $30,000 cost is for new construction since the sewer ban, and it is in lieu of, it is a charge we make in lieu of making you put in your own sewer, your own septic system.
No, we no longer have that, Dennis.
Excuse me?
We just have the statutory formula fee, which is around $10,000.
Okay.
For houses or lots that weren't in existence prior to December 1st, 1986, I think.
But all the older houses who are unsewered have already paid off their sewer debt, and all they have to do is pay the fixed price to hook up, assuming that they don't have to trench their front lawn and get through the rocks.
That's right.
The question about the $24.9 million net is based on a depreciation schedule. But the fact of the matter is, New Jersey municipal accounts do not use depreciation accounting. And this is a problem for every municipal auditor, is he doesn't know how to audit using standard accounting practices because we don't do depreciation accounting. We sort of wing it, and apparently the Public Utilities Commission has done a pseudo depreciation schedule that values pipe at 100-year life. But the fact of the matter is, when we pay off the sewer debt after 20 years from the state sewer fund, we've finished paying for it, which is the equivalent of what depreciation accounting does. If, in fact, we expect to get $25 million from a purchaser, and he expects to recover that cost from his ratepayers, i.e. through the sewer bill, we're going to wind up paying for that pipe twice. Once because we've already paid for it by paying off the notes from the state in 20 years, and secondly because he's going to want to start a 100-year depreciation life on the new pipe, and he's going to want to recover that. Scary to think that we don't understand cost accounting well enough to enunciate that clearly and explain it to the voters. And then there's the question of doubling the sewer bill overnight. We don't just take an extra $1.5 million from our sewer users, our ratepayers, and put it into the ground every year, which is what it would imply if we were to double the sewer rate. What we do is we go out and borrow $1.5 million and pay it off over 20 years. So the annual effect on the ratepayers is 1/20th of doubling, not doubling. And to shout out doubling the rates 2 or 3 times over the course of the past hour is a scare story and has nothing to do with intelligently educating the public on how
That's
to
not true
vote.
at all. It's $1.5 million per year times 20. That's $30 million that will be debt. We have $4.5 million in debt now. Do you realize what it would cost for $30 million worth of debt every year?
Well, if that's the way you were to handle it, but we've been
You just said we would borrow the money.
We've been doing stop-start on this for the past 16 and a half years, and we've managed to accrue $4.5 million worth of new debt in the past 16 years of managing the sewer ban.
Down the road.
Well, when does down the road start? I don't know. The other issue has to do with your net $20 million. If we were actually to get a $24.9 million purchase, and we got $4.5 million in debt to pay off, we got $20 million to burn a hole in our pocket, what would we do with that? The answer is we would raise taxes 2% every year. Because if you don't raise taxes 2% every year, you'll lose your momentum with the cap. And we have continued to raise taxes 2% every single year. We've managed to find ways of taking the extra money to build up to 1.99% and put it into a capital construction fund, put it into various other improvements that we need in the town, but we always raise taxes.
Dennis, that's a fair point, and I was going to ask, since you brought it up, I'll ask the mayor now, or whomever might know it. What's the total of other debt we have? And could we take the money from the sale of a sewer system?
We could.
And just pay off that debt?
You could.
No, that doesn't help things any, because what happens then is your debt service cost in the following year goes to zero.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. True.
And you still can't lower taxes. You're still going to raise them 2%, which means all the money that was going into debt service last year, which you've now paid off, will go into something else, like additional turf fields or badminton courts or whatever you choose to spend it on. You will never lower taxes. So the question is, what do you do with $20 million that's burning a hole in your pocket? You can either pay off your debt now, and then you'll have additional monies every year burning a hole in your pocket where the debt hole used to be, or you can just spend it on sidewalks on every street in town, for example. But the point is that the $24.9 million that you're expecting has to come from somewhere. And where will it come from? It will come from the ratepayers of the new private utility. Maybe not during the first 5 years, but they are not ignorant.
But as it does currently for all other utilities in the state, as it does for JCP&L, PSE&G, Nat Gas, whichever other Atlantic City Electric, it's what happens now.
No, what happens now, and what's happened over the past 15 years, actually 30 years with telephony, is that although you don't see rate increases going on, they're going on all around you. There's additional fees. There's the 9/11 fee that's been added to your phone bill. Then there's the 911 TTY for the deaf, which is an extra 50-cent surcharge on your telephone bill. Your TV bill, your FiOS bill, has all kinds of surcharges on it that you cannot imagine. The splitting of long distance out of your phone bill has caused both the long distance carrier and the local carrier to add fees. This just goes on and on and on. And now the electric companies down on the shore have a new scam. Normally, capital improvements are paid for by share owners or by borrowing. That's the way all industrial utility companies work. They raise money from their share owners, they put it into plant, they sell the operation, they get the money back, they pay dividends to their share owners. Except down at the shore, after the storms, the Public Utilities Commission has granted the electric companies the right to charge the utility repairs based on the hurricanes directly to directly to their ratepayers, and not burden their owners, their share owners, with the cost of maintaining the plant. This is a major switch in utility accounting that's gone on ever since the hurricane. Kudos to the power companies for figuring it out, because now they can continue to pay dividends to their share owners without having to borrow more money from their share owners. Great scam.
The water company did it too, by the way. They put in the remote meters, and there's a line item surcharge on your water bill for the remote meter for that capital expense.
Yep. And out in Pennsylvania, they charge me a 911 fee. My exchange is in one county, my house is in the other, and they cannot tell me whether I'm paying the 911 fee for Pike County, which is where they will respond from, or Wayne County, which is where they answer the phone. They don't even know, but they put the $1.15 on my bill every month. This goes on and on and on, and you can imagine that the Public Utilities Commission is only too glad to allow the utility to come up with a different scam for slicing and dicing so it doesn't look like there's a rate increase. All I'm suggesting to you is that, incidentally, the last time that you had an expert come in here about a year ago, I started in on the same tirade and I got cut off after 4 minutes, with the promise that I could bring my problems and questions and concerns to a free-ranging discussion with the committee. I don't know if the committee's met in the past year, but I've never been invited to one of their meetings. So all this cost accounting trivia goes to waste if the Township Committee decides to come up with its own syllabus for educating the public. And that scares the hell out of me, the quality of education. Do you want a precedent for this? Look at Old Town Hall. $700,000 in improvements to a building that we haven't made a single nickel of rental revenue on. Why? Because it sounded good at the time, and we had no idea what the ultimate cost would be. And don't tell me it isn't our money, because I pay to the county open space tax, which is where most of the money came from anyway. I thank you for your time, and I'm sorry to hassle you. Someday we're going to have a serious discussion about depreciation accounting.
There'll be 5 other meetings.
Excuse me?
There's 5 other meetings as required by law.
Any other comments from the public? Any other comments from the committee? Okay.
I'm just going to take a break. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Mayor, may I ask, we've got all of Stephanie's reports.
Okay.
We've got the news section set up on our website. Shall I load those up?
Yes,
with these
please.
things? Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
And
everything
I'll
should
put
go
that up on
there.
the Facebook, directing them to the tab.
Yep, please. So you had something on there for next week, so we need to continue the discussion next week, or what do we?
We had something on for the next meeting, which is March 8th.
Okay,
So that was, really the, March 8th was the
and when is the RFP?
initial presentation, which we're having tonight. So I guess we could call March 8th. We could put this on as a discussion and continue.
When is the RFP due?
RFP would be due June 6th. It would be the bid submission due date.
Okay.
Right, we'd advertise the RFP beginning April 24th. We do 6 times through May 29th.
Gentlemen, any suggested courses of action?
Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. What's the next topic? That's my course of action. Really want to know.
And then the next meeting, do we want to, we want to talk about this at next meeting? Do we
Oh,
want to?
yeah.
Yeah, we have to.
The,
Yes.
I can't remember the attorney's name.
Oh, Rick Saper?
Rick Saper.
No.
Do we need
No.
them in at this point, or?
Probably not.
No?
I think
Okay.
we hold on them for
Okay.
a bit, yeah.
But we need to
So we'll
talk.
just start discussing, talking,
Maybe Stephanie
Yeah.
can come back.
maybe Stephanie can come back.
Are you
At
gonna
the next
come?
meeting?
Around.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll, in case there are any other follow-up questions for the public, but.
That's right.
I mean, I'm thinking we need to start having the debate if we, if we're going to make that timeline to
Yeah, we
start
have to.
talking about what might go into the contract. Bruce, you all right with that, or? Okay.
I think it's important, too, we promote the meeting on March 8th.
Yeah,
That we're
no,
gonna have
I
this discussion and,
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean,
go on out.
we've thought about a bunch of things already, but clearly there could be something that,
Sure.
hey, what about this in the RFP?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's something that needs to be talked about, because if you don't get it in the RFP, it's too late.
We're done, yeah.
So, okay. All right. Stephanie,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
Committee liaison reports. I'll start on the right.
I thank CERT and Sterling Fire Company. They had a power outage at Sterling Manor on the 13th, and so it's the first time we got to use the warming station in town. Everything went well due to the volunteers in town. So, thank you.
Nothing from me.
Nothing?
The only thing to report is the Old Town Hall is, construction is ongoing and starting to look good. It's been framed out, and it's moving forward.
Guy, any
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. We talked about this, and I can bring it up in old business, but I spoke with Jack about forming a green team, and former committeeman Guy Rochto has volunteered to chair that. In order to form a green team, you have to have a resolution. So we don't have to do it tonight.
Is this for March because of St. Patrick's Day, or what's the green team?
Yeah.
For the record, St. Patrick is Italian. But no, in fact, I can have somebody come in and explain it, but most of the towns around here have green teams. Warren Watchung had asked us to do it a few years
There's a
ago.
website under Sustainable New Jersey.
And one of the benefits of having a green team, there's a checklist of what a town needs to do to become a Tree City USA, like Burnouts Township, et cetera. So that's just one of the things. So Guy Rochto has volunteered to be the chair.
How is this different than our Shade Tree Commission?
This is not a commission.
Right, it's just
It's an ad hoc committee, I think.
Wouldn't they be our green team?
But what's it?
you can make them,
They could be our green team?
yep, but you still have to establish the green team.
But what do they actually do?
I'm not sure. But there's a
They apply for
website.
grants, that's all I know.
Okay, this isn't some way of getting your ordinance about tree cutting.
Well, I think they look at recycling and, I mean, what, the tree, no, that's coming up, that's why I wore my tie.
It's green as in
Green, color.
trees?
Green
or
is sustainable.
Color, no,
Green
green
is
as in
recycling,
Environmental.
sustainable, environmental.
That's right.
That's why it's not shade.
Okay, gotcha.
Eco, green.
Eco, got it.
Oh, okay, you thought I was going, don't worry, I'm bringing that up too. All right, so anyway, I mean, I'll get information, we can go on the website, look at it. We're not going to do it tonight, but it has to be by resolution.
Okay.
Just a couple of things from the Shade Tree Commission. Unfortunately, we haven't met. We're meeting on Monday evening, but I went back and forth with some of the members just to go over a couple of things. One, we did talk about, they would like to come in at some point to revisit the possibility of a tree ordinance in town. So just put that in mind. Maybe at the end of April, I'll speak with them on Monday night to see when they might be prepared to come in. Sometime in April, May. It is no rush, right? I mean, there was a few. The DEP, that's on the agenda tonight, right? The trees from.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
It's
so-
after the discussion.
And I don't know, Neil, if you're going to mention there were 4 trees removed
I was going to bring that up under
in
my...
your report, so we don't have to go over that now. I just wanted to get that out there. No, we agreed to 2 trees and the county removed 4.
Yeah, but did we get that report last time that they took out 4?
No, I gave it
we
to you
got
at the
it during
finance.
the-
meeting.
Yeah.
You were just breaking it too slowly.
Thank you to Mr. Sweeney. I know we had a resident who's having a camp out at Hicks Track, and it was a tree that presented a danger, and I think you're going to take care of that. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. I have, well, the only thing I have is the Finance Committee met, but we'll be discussing that later, so I'll save my comments for later. Consent agenda. 17077 through 17082. Anyone have anything to pull for discussion?
Move 17-077 through 17082 as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Pasurchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler?
Yes. All right, next is, oh, do we want to do that resolution? Well, the other one is at the end of it.
You can do it with
The
the other one.
seedling one is at the end under discussion.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end of it, yeah.
First reading, Township of Long Hill Ordinance 394-17, an ordinance amending various sections of the Township Land Use Ordinances as recommended by the Planning Board. We discussed this last week, or last meeting. There were no additional comments from the committee.
Just so you know, there were several, like 3 minor numbering changes requested by Mr. O'Brien. Paragraphs were made sub-paragraphs, but none of the substance is changed in the final version.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? No? Silence is golden? Any comments from the public on 394-17? Nope, okay.
Motion to approve on first reading.
Second.
Second reading will be
Yeah, I left that blank, I don't know why, it's the March 22nd.
the 22nd.
22nd?
Second,
yes.
No, it's there.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Maringola?
Yes.
Committeeman Preserchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuster?
Yes. All right. Is it on?
Traffic Commission.
We just have two more things to get through, and we can get to that. I'm just trying to scroll through all the pages here. Next up, ordinance 377-17.
Yes, it's because it's got started.
Yep, okay. This is a second reading for adoption. Ordinance adopting amendments to the permanent sign regulations in the Township Land Use Ordinance as recommended by the Planning Board.
And we did receive the letter of not inconsistent with the master plan.
Correct. Any comments from the committee?
No.
I'm just going to make my obligatory Prince of Darkness comment. I think removing I think it was 15511, removing the requirement for businesses to turn off their lights a half an hour after closing and leaving it completely unrestricted is a bad idea. I'm open to negotiation on the half hour past, but
So,
I
Mr. Mayor-
don't see why things need to be on at 3 in the morning.
Mr. Mayor, some residents, one resident in particular had written us, and I took to heart what was said. And Dennis is here, and I know you don't represent per se the chamber, but do you feel that the chamber would want, what do the businesses think? Because my suggestion was going to be, is maybe we could make it a half hour or an hour, whatever it is, after the business closes, or 10 o'clock, whichever is later. I don't feel strongly about it, because I want to do anything that can help the local businesses in town. But if it's something that doesn't matter to them, does 10, midnight, something, as opposed to all night? And Dennis, I don't know if you can opine on
Well,
that.
let me open it to the public, and then he can...
Well, Dennis is the public.
Yes.
And so is Chuck, for that.
So, let me open that up to the public for this ordinance only, 377-17.
Mayor, I appreciate your concern, but I think you have to drive down Valley Road at 11:30 at night.
I do.
And carefully parse the lights that you see. The parking lot lights that are on at ShopRite and at Valley Mall are on because there are employees working, stocking shelves. For safety, we have to have them on.
And that constitutes a half an hour
The gas station
past
lights
those.
are on for as long as the gas stations are open, typically around 11 o'clock or so, but the hours are flexible. The 3 banks, Chase and Santander and PNC have lights very high intensity around their ATMs because they are required to do that.
Is that state statute,
Maybe
by the
it's
way, Fred?
4. I forgot Bank of America. And if you discount the very brightest of the lights that you see, which are on for lawful purposes, the question is, what other lights are there? And the answer is, there's 8 of them. And they're all the little wooden sign thingies, the sign in front of the vet shop, the sign in front of Dr. Malusi's office, the sign in front of the senior center, which isn't working these days anyway, the sign in front of the Elks. They're very unobtrusive informational ground signs are the only ones that are lit up. If you turned those 8 off, it wouldn't make a dent in the sky glow from the lights that are required to be on because the businesses are open or there are employees on site or they have ATMs. And so although I respect the fact that you feel there's an awful lot of light pollution at night, the incidental ground signs that are left on all night for identification of the business really aren't the factor, and I would suggest that you could sort of leave that alone. I'd like to make another comment about this ordinance. You may recall that when this was first came up again, which is about the 3rd or 4th time it came up, early in the year, I pointed out that the ordinance had to be edited because it still referred to the B2 zone, and since you passed the Valley Ordinance in November, that zone had disappeared. So you send it back to the Planning Board to do those editorial updates. And the Planning Board, 9 members of the Planning Board, 2 consultants and an attorney, looked over the revisions and approved it and sent it to you, and you introduced it at first reading a month ago and sent it back to the Planning Board for conformance with the master plan. And 8 members of the Planning Board and 2 consultants and an attorney looked at it again and said, yep, it's good, and they sent it to you and you have it in front of you, and it's still got an error in it.
And by the way, yourself included on the planning board.
If you will go to page 24 of 30, at least that's where it is on my copy of the agenda. Paragraph 155.11A, the 3rd line should read BD, not B2.
Yep. Thank you, Dennis.
That is one of the corrections that we should have made, but in our usual typical planning board thoroughness, we all missed it. And that's the extent of my comments.
Word has a great search and replace feature. You'd think we would have caught that.
So who's responsible for that, Jack or Debbie?
I'll take responsibility.
No, I mean making sure the change gets put in there.
Yeah, Debbie can.
You'll have to change it before it gets published.
Right.
Yes. Otherwise, it's an amendment that you have to make before you introduce this, I think. Jack?
This is a clerical correction, so we can adopt it this evening with that correction.
So my one comment to you, Dennis, about the lighting is, we saw an application at the planning board last week where we were discussing and concerned about the parking lot lights and the levels of the lighting on the application, that they were too high in some areas and there was spillage into the neighboring properties. And one of the big talking points was that they were going to turn the lights off per our ordinance a half an hour after they close. We removed that restriction.
Reset my clock. Which application was that?
The Goddard.
Goddard, okay.
Okay, right, the parking lot has lights on it, and it's right next to the entrance to Valley Mall, and, everyone was concerned about the light spillage and the lights, but we were told that the lights would get turned off a half an hour after closing per our ordinances. If we change our ordinances, we don't know whether or not they're suddenly going to be leaving the lights on.
And we presume that the parking lot lights would be turned off when the building is not occupied. At issue is the ground sign out front. Oh, and speaking of parking lot lights, have you ever driven past this building at 11:45 on a Saturday night when there's nobody anywhere in sight? Speaking of energy audits,
Yes,
This building?
yes,
this building,
yes.
Neil, would you please
Yes.
instruct Tom DeLeo tomorrow to issue a summons to Long Hill Township?
Yes.
at any rate, if Goddard wanted to leave its ground sign out front on the road lit up, which is no more obtrusive than the Solanto's, help me, Salento?
Barcelento.
He's got a sign that's lit up probably all night. I don't have any trouble with that. I'm sure he will turn his parking lot lights off.
But he's open, right? So when he's, I mean, I don't.
Well, no, he closes when his kids are gone, it's 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Barcelento? No.
I'm back to Goddard.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I mean, I don't, my objection, right, if you're open, if it's for safety reasons, I get it, but if it's 2 in the morning?
At one point last winter, I did a photo summary of the lights that were still on in the middle of the night, and I could ship that off to you if it would do any good. But basically, there aren't very many, except the high-intensity lights that have to be on, and that's coloring your impression of the whole thing. But when Elizabeth Ann Kennels leaves her lights on at night so that you know she's there, right next to the diner, who's always got his lights on because he's always open, is that really a killer?
Thank you, Dennis.
Charles Rabinowitz, Millington. As I highlighted in the email to all of you this morning about 6:30 a.m., I believe, thereabouts, in my 3.5 years on the planning board, I was on the administrative site plan approval subcommittee, the application review committee. In the 3.5 years, we had no one from any business in this town request that they keep the lights on a half hour after closing. Never happened. I've observed many planning board meetings, many township committee meetings in presence and at home. I started the meeting tonight at home. I've never heard anyone, any business say, I need to keep the lights on after closing. So I support my email to you this morning that you needn't keep the lights on all night and reinstitute, as the mayor suggested, 155.11. The comment about the Elks, the fire department, the senior citizens, or whatever, do not apply to this ordinance. They can keep the lights on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They're not a business in this town, and if they want to keep them on, they can keep them on. And that's fine. So I thank you for your time, and I hope you reinsert 155.11 back into this permanent sign ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck.
Any other comments from the public on 37717? Seeing none. Any other comments or actions from the committee?
I would just reiterate what I said earlier. It's not a deal breaker for me, but since we agree nobody's driving, the point for me is that it helps the businesses to advertise when people drive by. Nobody's driving by after midnight. I mean, a minor tweak where it's 10 o'clock or even midnight, but if that's not something that the committee wants to consider, it's fine by me. I don't see the benefit to a business by having their lights on beyond midnight. But, I mean, that's my only comment.
I mean, my only comment there is I'd leave that up to the discretion of the business owner. If they want, I mean, they're paying the electricity and replacing the bulbs, and if they think it's worth it, let them do it.
Motion to approve 377-17 as stated in the agenda upon second reading?
Second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Maringola?
Yes.
Committeeman Patercio?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler?
No. A really quick, if I can get to it, resolution, actually, do we need to do the discussion first? There's a discussion point first, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let me open,
A brief discussion.
yeah, that's all right. We have people here, so let me let them get up here so that they don't have to listen to us debate trees. Let me open up the meeting to the public for comments on anything not still on the agenda. How's that? So,
No, I think it's in discussion.
you wanted to talk about traffic, or, please, come on up. Yep. You've been elected.
Yes, my name is Ted Laffey. I'm a resident of Millington, lived at Oaks Road the last 45 years. I filled out an application. I noticed the article in the paper picked it up. I was in Mr. Henry's office, and that's why I'm here at night, and I have some residents of Oaks Road meet. Our understanding was, based on the article in the newspaper, that tonight the commission would be formed.
Would be formed or is formed?
Would be formed.
True.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's where we're at. I mean, that's why we're here. And what is next? The group was going to be represented by some of the officers and also the police department and two residents.
So we can have a full conversation, since you brought it up, I was going to bring it up under old business. I was going to recommend tonight that we had said 2 residents. I would recommend that we have 4 residents, each one representing a section of the town. So Myersville, Gillette, Millington, and Sterling.
What about Homestead Park?
Homestead Park, if you want to include them. So that would be 5. But to answer the gentleman's question, maybe, Mayor, you can describe where we are in this process.
So we have a resolution still pending to form the ad hoc committee. The membership of which is still to be determined. We've received a number of letters from residents that are interested in being a part of this committee. I think the plan in all cases is that the committee would be meeting in a more dynamic setting with any member of the public. So if you weren't all on the committee, you would still be able to engage in those discussions at those meetings. So we're not in such a formal setting here, and you're having to wait until 9:45 at night.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't think this should be part of these long meetings. It's a very, it's a very isolated question in each case. It only involves a very few people. I'm for that, to accomplish anything, but that's the way it should be. And the reason I'm here tonight is that the article, 2 issues back, when it was discussed with the police department and other people, yourself and your comments were in the meeting, Mr. Henry, and so on. The last sentence in that newspaper article was, no Oaks Road resident was present. Yet this discussion, there was a discussion which, pertained directly to Oaks Road. And that got my attention because it looked like we didn't care, yet we weren't aware of the meeting or for any reason. That's why I'm here tonight. I volunteered to fill out the application. I have another person from Oaks Road. I talked to other people, and this other person was here willing to participate and focus just on Oaks Road, not River Road or the other roads, just the input on what the problem is there and what was suggested and the pros and cons. And then my purpose here is just to furnish input so that whoever makes the final decisions and makes the judgments is aware of all the points of view and makes the best judgment in the interest of the people of Long Beach Township. That's what I care about, their safety and their well-being. I represent the people in that area. That's our purpose, and
Well, thank you for that.
the sooner we can do that, the better.
I think the best venue for you to have the discussions is with that committee. If you're not a part of that committee directly, I think the public makeup is still, I don't think that's been selected yet, right?
No, it hasn't, no.
So that still needs to be selected. If you have any comments specifically about Oaks Road that you'd like to share with us and let us know what your feelings are, because you're right, we did do a lot of talking about Oaks Road. Nobody from Oaks Road was there, so you're welcome to.
Well, I can make a
comments
very
now.
quick comment tonight from my point of view, okay? As I said, the way the paper advertised it, the committee was to be formed tonight, and any input was to be given. But a quick point of view that would have been brought up by me as a member of the committee is the discussion in the newspaper focused on a lot of pros and cons, but the main article in the paper that was brought up and a lot of discussion on by yourself, police department, so on, was the use of the road for emergency vehicles. That was the primary point of the whole discussion that night. There was other items and so on, but that was the primary point that was brought up. It was a matter of life and death. I think the deputy mayor issued that, and the police department offered something about a case of litigation and how tough that would be, and a lot of time was devoted to that. The other points were also discussed, but that was the main thing, and that's the point I focused on. In my view right now, with the way I looked at it, the portion of the road we're talking about is from the intersection of Division Avenue and Long Hill, where the railroad station is located, to Basking Ridge Road, and that consists of a dirt road, which is a driveway to the home that was owned by Mr. Nishwitz, and then the paved portion of the Oak Road to Basking Ridge Road. That distance is approximately closely to is a half a mile, and almost divided equally between the dirt portion and the paved portion. But a half a mile, that's within a tenth of a mile. The other distance to get to Basking Ridge Road, and that would be if the emergency existed, and if someone was at Division Avenue and had to decide, should I go that way to get to Basking Ridge Road and out to 287 to get to the hospital, or should I go on Long Hill Road to get to Basking Ridge Road? That distance is 4/10 of a mile and a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. So if you're driving an emergency vehicle, what's your choice? To get to Basking Ridge Road and get to the hospital if you were in an ambulance. Also, right at that point is the firehouse, and the other firehouse is in Sterling. They would come there either Long Hill or Valley Road. My point is, in no way would any emergency vehicle take the dirt road, Oaks Road route to get from one point to the Basking Ridge Road. He would go up the hill, which is shorter, and he's going 3 times the speed. I mean...
I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree most traffic should go that other way. However, in my understanding from Brendan, he's the expert on this, not me.
Go ahead.
It's really for, and you live on Oaks Road, right?
Yes.
Yeah. My understanding from Brendan's comment, it wasn't for an emergency vehicle to make that quick up there. It was for the people that live on Oaks Road.
It was for the people in that neighborhood.
Well, the people that live within that boundary of Basking Ridge Road, Long Hill Road, and Oaks Road, you mean where I live?
On Oaks Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the fire company needed to get to you, or if the...
The way they would get to me is the way they do get to me, and the way the ambulance has gotten to my home. I've lived there 45 years. I've had 2 ambulances called.
Okay.
In both cases, they come down Basking Ridge Road and up Oaks Road. In no
Right,
case
and-
have I ever seen an ambulance come through the dirt road or exit through the dirt road. They just don't take it. It's
But I think the concern was the fire truck.
Yeah, it was say, if there was an emergency, say at the end of in Mr. Nishwitz's house, say the old Mr. was it Nishwitz's house? Right. So if you were to come from the Millington station, the easiest way would be to go up that dirt road and get there rather than kind of navigate your way around.
No. If he come out of the Millington station is right on Long Hill Road. Long Hill Road comes right down to the junction with Division.
Mm-hmm.
The fire station's right there, next to the auto body place and so on. They come out of that door, they go right up to Cross Hill. If they wanted to get straight down, they would just pull right out, make a left, and go right straight on down Cross Hill Road to Hilltop and then down
But
to
even
Oaks.
if they did that, they would still have to get to the house.
Yeah.
They never go on the dirt road. They never go on the dirt road.
No, there's no houses on the dirt road, but to get up to that, I mean, it's something that would, as I say, whenever we sit down with the police and that we can look at it, but it was a shortcut where you go up to that section rather than kind of navigating around the roads that you have
No navigation
up there.
necessary. If the fire truck comes out of there, the Bridges house had a fire there about 5 years ago. They can come right out of the firehouse and they can go right down Church Road. But the way they go to the stop sign, down Basking Ridge Road, and then up Oaks Road. The speed limit on Basking Road is 40 miles an hour. The speed limit on Long Hill is 35. They don't go that is not a shortcut. Talk to the volunteer firemen. I do. I know.
Yeah, we can talk to them.
Yeah. And the other guys you talk to is the guys down in the rescue squad.
Okay, I mean that's
No, I'm just
again,
saying that.
yeah.
I've talked. I don't want to mention their names. I've known them a long years. I know guys that are retired from there. They don't go down that dirt road. It serves no purpose in an emergency.
I mean, again, this is exactly the kind of discussion that we would have within the confines of the committee. And whenever we were talking that night, it would be. To me, that seemed to be the quickest route up there, and to close that road, you were potentially causing some danger there, and it was also a concern that was shared by the police at the time. But I think, rather than kind of prolong it tonight, it's within the committee. This is the kind of discussion that we could have.
First, I think the question was asked, and that's why I briefly did.
Yeah,
I've got the times I made the runs, the times I took, and I can show you exactly. I've marked up a map of the area for the copy for everybody who's on this commission that can look at it and then decide yes or no. That's up to them. But the facts are here that the shortest and safest route is up Long Hill and down Basking Ridge Road if you want to get from that point, which the dirt road is the way to go. The problem with the dirt road basically is it gives people a shortcut coming from the west. When they hit that hill, instead of going up to the light and down, either to the railroad station or Division Avenue, they shoot up Oaks Road and hit the dirt road. And it's actually a 5/10 of a mile to do that point where when they go up to the light, you are on Long Hill Road and you're doing 40 miles an hour. So you travel the same distance and 3 times the speed. So there's never a reason to go into.
Can I ask you a question? Do you advocate closing the road, or do you advocate paving the road?
Closing the road.
Closing the road, okay.
It's Green Acres also. Closing the road would eliminate that straight traffic that comes up to the railroad station and Division as a shortcut. Get the speeders out of our neighborhood. There's no sidewalks on that road. It's very narrow. Everybody walks. We got the kids walking to school. And there's no need to have that open for through traffic. That should be just a local road the way it was originally designed. If you looked at the map, that road originally dead-ended at Nishwitz's house, and the path from there was his driveway, which he donated to he donated the land for the railroad station. If you read the history of this town, you find out that guy, he built that house in 1870, and that's when that dirt road led to the railroad station. And it's still that dirt road that leads to the railroad station, but in them days, and they have photographs, he had a horse and buggy when he went down to catch the train. Now the guys are going through there with a V8 Jeep, you know?
You know, and I have no doubt what you're saying is right. Me driving, I would never, I didn't even know Oaks Road existed until I think it was Irene and I was driving up, maybe just, or maybe it was Mischief Night. I went up there to throw eggs at George Vittorera's house.
Right.
But I think the mayor mentioned it last time, and I spoke with the gentleman that lives just off of Oaks and Cimarron, and he had said the previous week a tractor trailer with cars went down there. Clearly, that wasn't his intent. The GPS set them that way.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix that part of it, by the way.
Well, the way to handle it right now, I mean, that dirt road should be put up with a no outlet signs, just like the other dead ends there. You know, Forest Hill has a dead end right above Oaks Road, no outlet signs. And as far
But not close it where we put a gate because of the emergency vehicle, if they have to come in or out or...
Well, you don't, the emergency vehicle will never go there. They have no reason to.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Yeah, and that's for the committee. All right.
Can we put a sign on Basking Ridge Road that says no through traffic?
Well, on the next road,
You can try it. I mean,
on the other,
No outlet.
the other,
Tom, do you got any signs at DPW, no outlet, no through traffic?
they say no outlet.
Can you put one on
hold on a
Basking
second.
Ridge and Oaks there?
I don't know if legally we can do that. If
Why
we
not?
can, happy day.
why not? It
Well, we
doesn't,
can put no outlet because
doesn't
it's not
say
a
go.
public street.
Yeah.
The dirt portion is not a
So
public street.
let's put the sign,
public street.
let's put
No,
the
I
sign
agree.
on Basking Ridge and Oaks so that traffic can't come that way.
I agree.
You look on a state map, if you look on a state map of that Oaks Road, where Oaks Road turns and goes towards Hill, it shows a dotted line on the state map and it says unimproved.
Go ahead, use the mic.
yep, yeah.
If we're legally allowed to do it, I think it's a great idea.
Hey, put no outlet.
The thing, I just have to remind you, right, that we put together a committee. We have the engineer, we have the police, we have the experts. We also, and now we're kind of circumventing the whole thing. This is a conversation, and it's a good conversation, and that we should have in the committee, and we should follow the process.
Still say we put a sign up that says no through traffic.
Which means he ignored everything you just said.
Everything.
Please,
Go ahead.
For a chance, I just want something.
if you could state your
My
name,
name
please.
is Linda Panetta. I am a resident of Oaks Road for 34 years. I've lived there, own my house there, and I have seen many of things happen because of because of the traffic and the increased traffic and speed of people speeding down to the road to get to the train. I've had 2 cars on my lawn. I saw a drunk driver go off the careen down by the train track. A dog was killed. Yesterday I was walking on the dirt road, and because it's so narrow, I moved to the side, and I'm not exaggerating, but the car that was coming down brushed my arm because she didn't want to move over into the ditch because there's potholes. Okay, so it's very unsafe for people to actually drive down that road. And because of the fact that it is green space, it shouldn't be used as a road. And I wanted to just give a suggestion that if we put the bollards, they're called bollards, they're removable. You just block the road with the bollards. I think Rutgers has them, and for walking paths. And they remove them when the emergency vehicles have to use the road. It's a simple solution. And, you know, I just wanted to share that because my concern is safety of the people, and there is increased children now in the neighborhood. My kids grew up, and they knew enough, you know, to be careful on that road. But there's also a bend going around, going down into, when you go down the road or up the road, and it's invisible for you as a walker, you know, for the cars to see you. And if they're zooming up that road or down that road, you're going to get hit. And it's happened. So you know, it's just a concern, and I am for closing the road.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Your comments and suggestions are the ones in the paper that's what was going to take place. There was going to be input by the committee, and then the judgment made. And that's why I'm here tonight.
Oh yeah, no, but what we're doing is we're putting together a committee specifically to deal with it, to deal with the problem. Where I hope you'll either be a member or you'll come. Certainly, whenever we discuss
I did
Oaks
fill out
Road.
the application to be on that committee and
Great.
turned it into to deal. So that's what it's.
And then I think we'll be talking further one way or the other.
I'm glad we got a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you who read through to the end of the email that I sent all of you 2 weeks ago, I pointed out that Oaks Road is currently listed in the ordinance as having a 5-ton weight restriction. All we have to do is be sure that those signs are posted.
They are posted.
They are posted. Maybe we need bigger signs. Maybe we need illuminated signs so that the trucks, I'm sorry, Carnell, so that the trucks are advised that there truly is a patrol officer waiting to impound their truck.
I think sometimes the trucks go down there by accident, they're just not,
If you have a big enough sign that says, I mean, we got 18 streets in town that have weight limits, restrictions listed in the ordinance. We have 18 streets in town that have weight restrictions listed in the ordinance. Only about half of them are posted. All the streets that represent shortcuts have weight restrictions. Hickory Tavern Road, Carlton Road.
Lackawanna?
Huh?
Lackawanna?
I'm not sure about Lackawanna, but I know Oaks is one that makes a decent shortcut. They all have weight restrictions, but only about half of them are posted. We ought to make it our business to post it, repost Oaks Road very vigorously, both sides, both ends, in the middle, whatever, and then enforce it. I mean, we do some pretty crazy and useless enforcement in this town. Let's enforce no trucks on Oaks Road for a few weeks and get that message out. We don't have to have, I remember the discussion at the last meeting about no through traffic. That's pretty hard to prove, because if you stop somebody, he says, well, I really wasn't going through, I'm going to make a turn at Cross Hill. But we can enforce weight limit. It's pretty clear cut because all trucks have their weights posted on the side, painted on the side. That's a first order solution to this problem.
Thank you, Dennis. You said you never knew Oaks Road existed. Oaks Road was one of the first roads I ever drove on in Long Hill.
Why?
Because I was looking at houses up on the top of the hill in Millington.
Are you sure it wasn't because you were trying to get to Baskin Ridge?
No.
No. Lackawanna is not excuse me, restricted.
Should be.
Okay. I'm sorry, Chuck.
Charles Renowitz, Millington. Your actions never cease to amaze me.
Positively?
Apparently, some of you have gotten comments from businesses. They want to keep the lights on. In my January 25th memo to you all, I indicated that if you approve the permanent sign ordinance as it is, it's inconsistent with 3 goals of the master plan. If what you decided tonight is true, and you want to go forward based on your discussion with all the businesses that I was unaware of, then as a couple of you, or at least one of you, are on the master plan committee, let's start changing the goals. Let's start looking like Route 22. Where are your heads at? Do you have no sense of community of what this town looks like and what it wants to be? If you decide this tonight, which you already have, just change the master plan. We don't want to be a rural community. We don't want to be environmentally sound. This is like Houston. Have any of you ever been to Houston? There are no zoning ordinances in Houston. You can do whatever you want. Based on your vote 20 minutes ago, I think I'm in Houston. Where are your heads at? This is not what the community wants. In 3 years, no businesses came forward to the planning board, to the township committee. I want to turn my lights on. But you guys want to have the lights on. For what reason? To spend money? To light up the roads? God help us. Just change the master plan, and I'll be at the next master plan committee with Brendan and with Mr. Sandow, and we'll change the goals of the town. Thank you for your time, and let's make a change, and let's move to Houston.
Moving on to the discussion items. Preliminary assessment for land diversion from Eco Sciences. Neil, can you give us some background on that,
Sure, would be
please?
happy to, Mayor. In your packets this evening is a proposal from Eco Sciences for a preliminary assessment environmental analysis for the properties that we're preparing a pre-application for major land diversion application. This is required as part of the pre-app. The reason for me to bring it before the committee this evening is just to get a general consensus before I sign the authorization and move off and get the report done. It's $4,000 base for fixed fee, and then there's some additional hours involved should there be an attendance requirement at meetings. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking just for a consensus to move forward with this if there's no objection now rather than later. We need it for the pre-app, and I think it's a critical part and something we need to do.
Comments from the committee?
No, I mean, I think it seems like straightforward enough that we should do it.
Okay. Do we just need a voice?
You can just do a voice vote because it's less than the bid, or it's less than the quote threshold, so you can just authorize Neil to go ahead.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Second topic, Valley Road redevelopment. Bruce, can you?
That's going to recuse himself.
I have two conflicts. We represent both developers.
Two or none at all.
Yeah, that's right.
For the record, Matt is recusing himself.
So the subcommittee met, we reviewed the RFPs, both RFPs are in your packets, and we met with both developers to understand their proposals, try to get more detail from them, and then they were rescored. As a result of the meetings and then the rescoring, the Elite Properties group came out with a score of 98 out of 100, and the Amboy Holdings group came out with a score of 80 out of 100. The principal difference is both proposals essentially were mixed-use retail residential proposals. The main difference was the Elite guys took the time to understand Long Hill, our ordinances, some of the architectural standards, some of the goals that we're trying to achieve, whereas the Amboy Holdings guys essentially submitted a proposal and said, we're here to basically talk about what you want to do. And didn't really do any investigative work, any type of background, any type of understanding of the township and our ordinances. So we were a little disappointed with the approach of Amboy, even though they essentially had the same type of proposal. So that's why we are recommending the Elite Properties Group as the designated redeveloper.
Any comments?
No, I think Bruce summed up the meeting very well in our discussion.
So what we would do at this point is we would recommend that the Township Committee, as the redevelopment authority, approves the appointment of Elite Properties as the recommended redeveloper, and then we would enter into negotiations with them to become the redeveloper through a redevelopment contract. At the same time, we would like to put their proposals up on the web and solicit comment from the public on it. Essentially, at this point in time, we would take those comments and try to work them into the redevelopment plan, and the redevelopment plan would essentially become the de facto zoning for that area. And that's sort of the process at this point.
So Bruce, going up on the web would be the Elite proposal?
The Elite proposal, yes. Now, granted, the Elite proposal has pluses and minuses to it, but I think the point of putting it out to the public is to get feedback on the idea and then try to craft the redevelopment plan as a result of that feedback. Questions?
Yes. What are we committing to at this point?
We're committing to negotiating with Elite to become the designated redeveloper.
Yeah, we're not designating.
We're not, you negotiate with them, and then once we have the terms defined for the redeveloper, that comes back to us for review and discussion.
So what terms are we seeking?
We don't have a term sheet put together at this point. That's something that the committee would have to do next.
Oh, and then that comes back before the TC?
Yeah, and it's things like, they would acquire the properties, they would meet, certain architectural standards as defined by, our master plan and ordinances and things like that.
So those would happen before or after the public comment session? I don't understand the process.
Well, we could do them simultaneously. I mean, we want to get input on the design, so that once we have the designated redeveloper under contract and we move to the design phase, we have the public input at that point.
Well, Jack, maybe this is a question for you, but I mean, my concern is, where does this become a point of no return?
Not until you adopt,
if ever.
not until you adopt the redevelopment plan by ordinance and execute the redevelopment agreement with the redeveloper. I'm sorry.
You not speaking into the mic?
Yes, I know. It's late. Yeah, to reiterate, it's not until after you adopt the redevelopment plan by ordinance and execute the redevelopment agreement with the designated redeveloper. So at this point in time, there's nothing binding.
I mean, it is possible that we go down the path and say, we want X, and they say, well, we can only do Y. And at that point, we're at we can't move forward.
Right.
Right, so
we're going to approve negotiating
with Elite,
but we don't know, so should we not be first having discussions around what we want to negotiate for?
You want to do that? You want to negotiate in public? I mean, we typically don't negotiate contracts in public.
No, fair point. I just don't know. So I guess I'm still missing on, if we're authorizing a negotiation, what are we negotiating for?
For them to become the authorized redeveloper.
But with
And I believe they're fairly standard. The agreements are fairly standard. In terms of the things that in terms of the
And
substance.
things, they may ask things like, we, absolutely need a pilot program. We may say, that's not something we want to do. So those are points of negotiation.
So with those, help me understand, right? You go to them and let's just say that scenario comes up. What happens then? Does doing a pilot become a public discussion?
At some point, it would.
It would at some point, but I think it would be.
You have to adopt the redevelopment plan, which is really similar to a zoning ordinance plus a site plan. And that has to be done by ordinance after public hearing and everything. All that would be included in there. And then only after that redevelopment plan is adopted by ordinance do you then adopt a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with the redeveloper. So it's really not till that last step that you're bound, but I think Bruce is right that a lot of these negotiations have to take place in private, or you're not going to have any bargaining power.
Right.
All right, so basically what we're talking about here is based on our RFP and the scoring of RFP, we are recommending Elite as the authorized redeveloper. Right? So we want authorization to enter discussions with them about becoming the authorized redeveloper.
Okay, so enter discuss. Okay.
It's not really negotiations at this point. It's really discussions.
Yeah. Yes, it's discussions around certain,
Negotiation implies, at least to me, that you're trying to hit
At some point, I think it'll evolve into negotiations.
I know eventually you got to get to a contract, but it seemed more immediate.
Right. Now, in addition to that, we want to put their proposal up on the web, and we want to start the process of soliciting input from that. And we would look to Jessica to lead some of that information gathering. Okay, and we'll put a plan together and submit that to the Township Committee to review for that process.
So are the public meetings at the Township Committee or at the Planning Board?
They would be either at the Township Committee or separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
But by the Township Committee, because you are the redevelopment agency.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But you really can't have a redevelopment plan until after you've had these discussions with the redeveloper because you don't know what's feasible.
Yeah.
There's no point in adopting a redevelopment plan that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It has no chance of happening.
Right.
Okay.
So at this point, we would need agreement on...
Resolution.
Or is it resolution?
I think just a motion to authorize, the...
All right, motion to enter negotiations with Elite Properties to become the authorized redeveloper.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo.
Yes.
Committeeman Patercio.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray.
Yes.
Mayor Schuler.
Yes.
All right, so at next meeting, we'll have a plan to solicit public feedback. And Neil, if you could send a letter to Elite and let them know that we'd like to discuss with them becoming the authorized redeveloper.
And I'll get that up on a website, the concept.
Please.
Yep.
As much information from them as possible. Okay.
I can come back.
Oh, right. We can invite Matt back.
He's right here by the door.
Almost forgot about him.
Is he sleeping?
Huh?
He's probably sleeping.
Taking a nap back there, Matt?
Yeah. He's going.
You gonna leave the budget discussion?
He's missing.
I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually,
We gotta wait, we're missing two.
I couldn't find Matt.
Let Neil do it.
All right.
Congratulations.
What's that?
I'm gonna let you lead.
Oh, okay.
Once we get, now we lost two guys.
Can we discuss the last discussion about the redevelopment or not? Can I comment on that? Why not?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that Matt's got to recuse himself again. but
Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's the question.
Yep.
Here's the question. Have we decided that the group of you are redevelopment authority?
Yes.
That was decided in an ordinance, or?
You can come back out.
No, by doing nothing, but it was discussed publicly. If they were going to create a redevelopment agency, that would have had to have been done formally. But
Right.
the default is that the governing
Oh, so if you
body,
take no action, you guys are in charge?
these guys, yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Because when I looked at this, I assumed we had to create a agency and an executive in charge of that agency.
No,
In light of that, the mayor's in charge.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
But since the governing body is the redevelopment agency, you're the chairman of the governing body, so you're the chairman of the...
Oh, okay. Thank you. Another promotion.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, we have, I think fairly early in the year, a first
Probably the earliest we've had it.
draft of a 2017 municipal operating budget. That, just the operating, right? We don't have the CapEx today?
I've included in the packet, the CapEx.
Okay.
If we want to talk about that.
Okay.
You know, I think our goal is to, the evening that we adopt the budget, be in a position to also approve on the capital expenses, although not completely necessary, something we want to aim for.
Okay. Well, if you can give us the rundown,
Sure,
please.
no problem. So we started the process as we usually do in November. We met with the department heads. We've had several meetings with the Finance Committee, Len, myself, Cornell, and Bruce. And our goal is to present to you this evening the work that we've done in the committee, give you the opportunity to take a look at the budget, offer your comments, suggestions, so that we can go back, take them and fine-tune it, so that we can hopefully introduce the budget at the March 8th meeting with our goal set on having a public hearing and adopting it the first meeting in April, which I think is April 11th. So just some highlights on the budget, and feel free to jump in and ask questions. This year's budget is being put before the committee and features a 0% tax increase. You know, we really went through the line items. We were aiming for 0, and that's what we're putting before you this evening. There are some side comments to note. We had to, back to the sewer discussion, we have to increase the amount that we have to raise through revenue by $130,000 to offset some additional expenses related to litigation, which we've got pending. Municipal court revenue was down $35,000, but on the appropriation side, salaries, we've budgeted a 2% increase for all non-unionized employees. The police and DPW maintain their contractual increases. We've added $9,000 to the master plan. We've got $17,000 set aside in a separate line item for redevelopment. Our health benefits have remained flat. We've got budgeted a number for 2 police cars this year. We've been doing 1, but we've got in the budget for 2.
If I could, sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
Before I forget, you said health benefits are flat. Is that because there was no increase, or is that because of loss of employees on plans? I mean, usually healthcare goes up like 17%.
I think that's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know, some other featured items. We actually increased the township aid to the first aid squad by $10,000. A great find by Detective Bauer. We've been back and forth on discussing a generator for the police headquarters, and we were talking about having to rent one for a significant amount of money per month while we deliberate, you know, what we do on a permanent generator. Gary went up to Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania, with the help of Eric Stenzel from the DPW, and picked up a generator that will suffice as a temporary generator at zero cost. It had a total of 5 hours runtime on it. It still had the owner's manual on the side of it. So you'll see we budgeted $3,000 to get that hooked up and get that running. Lost my spot here. We also put an additional line item for the rescue squad, $15,200. They're looking for a stretcher. The library, we allocated $23,000. They've had their energy audit done, and that's the number they're looking for to implement the recommendation from the energy audit company. Crack sealing, we got a separate line item for $15,000. One thing that Tom wants to do this year, and I concur, we have lost a employee in the wastewater division. We'd like to replace that head over on the roadside. That enables us to reduce the landscaping cost. This employee would come in and maintain the park here. He'd cut the grass, he'd line the field and such. And then our focus with that additional employee would do some additional crack sealing. Now, typically it's been 2 or 3 roads per year. Tom's proposal is to do it in-house with the extra man, going out and renting the equipment. He can knock off a number of roads doing it that way versus contracting it out. So we've set up the separate line item for crack sealing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So it sounds like a great idea, but then the person that was doing field maintenance, who's going to do that?
The guy we're moving over.
That too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's going to come over. So what we've done, Guy, is we reduced the number we pay to an outside source to come in and landscape, and we're going to hopefully.
I thought it was either or, but it's...
No, it's definitely both. So it gives the road division another head to go out and do some of the things we need to get done. Those are some of the highlights I had. Cornell or Bruce, I don't know if you guys want to chirp in with anything else.
So I have one additional highlight. What we did this year, and I think, if memory serves, I spoke about it at the tail end of the budget last year. We increased by 2% the amount of money that we're putting towards capital improvement / debt. So that number has typically been a static number for the past, as long as I've been on the committee, that number hasn't changed. So we raised that by 2% this year to, capital equipment increases in price, so it seemed like the sensible thing to do. So that was about $40,000 or something that we increased, and we're trying to pocket that towards capital expenses rather than borrowing. And we'll hear about the capital plan in detail coming up. But yeah, I think we had a sound budget. We had a couple of things last year that were one-times that didn't come again, the 150th party, so I think it's,
we're just discussing this tonight. We're not going to get too deeply into the weeds on it. Or
if you have any questions, now's the time.
I think we're looking for feedback, guys, so we can go back and the goal is to obviously...
My one question, of course, is and I'm thrilled that the First Aid Squad will be increased to what I think they should have always been. I don't know why we didn't do that in the past, so I'm grateful for
because
that.
You were mayor.
Because I was...
He's speechless.
So the $10,000 increase from 35 to 45
Correct.
puts them on par with the 2 fire companies.
Correct.
We know that they're looking for...
We added the stretcher in also.
Right, but not the actual...
Not the lift.
Not the lift.
Right.
We could do that next year. We discussed that. And
Would you mind if I brought that back? Has anybody discussed this with the people at First
I have
Aid?
not. This is the first time. I mean, I talked to the chief about his capital. I've spoken to Tom about the capital.
So
I
you
haven't
won't
really
even-
gotten in the weeds.
Well,
with
I thought, my understanding was they weren't even sure that they needed that second piece. That
No,
was
no,
what I-
they do.
Oh, they do, because when I ran into Bob, okay, a couple of months ago, had just had a presentation by the company, and they were, at that point, still undecided. I didn't hear back from him one way or the other, and whether or not he
Well, I've
wanted
spoken
to.
with him since, and, you know, Bob asking for anything is like pulling teeth. I mean, that's why he was at 35 for all these years when he could have been at 45. For anybody who doesn't know already, this is a first aid squad that basically averages 2+ calls per day. They're critical to the township. So I'm just saying, if they need it, and what Bob had mentioned to me is almost certainly within a few years, not only is it a good thing to have, it'll be a requirement to have those, that apparatus, or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish on this. So again, maybe Neil can call the captain and call Bob as well, and see where they stand on it.
On the lift stretcher? Yeah.
And remember, this is a first aid squad that has quite a few seniors on it, thankfully. But
Now, keep in mind, we have to weigh some of the other capital expenditures that other areas are needed. For example, the library millage is down this year, and they had a significant requirement for their energy upgrade, for the energy audit. We're funding that $23,000 out of our budget, okay, because their millage is down. The police department needed an extra car. We're funding a second car this year. You know, we're increasing the first aid squad in addition to that stretcher. So there are some priorities that had to be spread out. You know, and if the automation thing didn't make it this year as a result of that prioritization.
I mean, look, that's fair enough. I just wanted to point out, it appears that we might have thought that they didn't think it was necessary.
It's up for debate.
I'd be more than happy to call Bob and just, report back.
All it takes is 3 to say, put it in.
Yeah.
I mean,
We can wait to hear.
Well,
it's entirely...
to be fair, we're just beginning the conversation.
Yes, no, understood.
Yeah,
So let's find
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Let's talk to the source first.
But
before
I
we-
think Brendan was saying something.
No, just if you're finished on that topic, it's somewhat related. It's the, I believe, whenever I looked at the budget, that the maintenance for the fire companies, they're up.
Well, no, I know. I have bills. I got bills from Charles and Kevin, both fire chiefs, about some unexpected repairs that need to be made, that were made, actually. I know there's tires, things like that. And these, obviously, now you can't go to Firestone and get these tires, so.
Yeah, these are,
There's a bunch of other things, too. I didn't print out the bills, but they did email me about a month ago, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have here is an aging fleet of vehicles, and you know, as the years go on, they need more maintenance, and this is both chiefs from Stirling and Millington have echoed the concern that we are not putting enough. I mean, I think the amount of money we've put in for maintenance has stayed essentially flat over the last couple of years, and it's just not enough for them to keep up with the maintenance of the vehicles. And I know they've requested.
It's stayed the same.
Yeah, it stayed the same.
What is the maintenance line now?
It's 10.
10
per?
10 per company.
Per company.
10 per company.
And that's.
And what are you recommending?
I mean, I'd love to see 20, but probably 15.
So
would be-
from a budget standpoint, let's put this in perspective. Right now, we budget $90,000 for the 2 fire companies. Then we have an additional maintenance line, $10,000 each, for a total of another 20.
90 is 45 a piece.
45 each, right? So this is for the fire companies. right? So there's 90, and then there's another 20 for maintenance. And then on top of that, there are capital items, which we'll talk about in a second. So, you're talking close to 150,000 in allocations between the operating and the capital for the fire companies.
Yeah, but I mean that's probably true. But nevertheless, they can, as far as the 45,000 that's given, they allocate to both fire companies. I mean that is utilised, and I think both companies can have and will provide you the places where that is actually spent and used.
No, I'm not arguing with how it's used. I'm just telling you what the allocations are.
Oh yeah, I know, but the thing is that the $15,000, the $10,000 right now that's been allocated for vehicle maintenance, it isn't enough, and where the fire companies can't find the money to put to the fleet maintenance. It should come from the town.
Now, and I think Matt, you're both of you familiar. So when the maintenance costs are higher than has been allocated, the bills that Matt just mentioned,
Brent will know better than me.
The fire company has to pay. I mean, that's
So hang on.
Or they have to come back to the town somehow in some other way to do that.
So Millington last year had a budget of 10,000. They spent 4,600.
I think there were. I mean, I just know from the chief that he wouldn't buy that budget. That's from the bills that were.
I've seen invoices that total over 6.
Yeah.
Well, then
I mean, I think this is something
for them out of someplace else.
Right.
But the fleet maintenance line item for Millington, page 12, the budget was 10. They spent 46.
Maybe they just haven't.
It
could be that the bill hasn't hit yet from last
yeah.
year, and it's hit this year. That could be.
It was towards.
Could be that this year's going to be a higher year.
Towards the end of the year.
Let's be clear. We're not going to cut.
No, but I think what Brendan's saying
is
these are 16 bills that haven't been submitted, possibly.
Yeah. I mean, this is coming from the two chiefs from Millington and Stirling have come, and they've both voiced the opinion that they don't have enough money in the budget and for the fleet maintenance to cover the expenses that they incur during the year. So, I make the point. I think what we need to do is actually go back to them and say, okay, how do you jive your $4,600 here with what you've actually spent? So that's fair
I think
enough.
the other question we should start asking is, can we get some savings by standardizing equipment between the companies? Right, because right now we have, I think the issue was last year when we talked about different breathing apparatus and stuff. Is it possible that we standardize between the two, and as the township, we now start purchasing one set of equipment to be distributed as needed, so to speak? I mean, is there savings there and efficiencies there that we can gain?
I mean, I think it's something that we can certainly look at.
Or at least get them on the same rotation pattern, right? We've got one company that's replacing equipment a percentage every year, and we have another company that does the whole lot in 1 year, and then we don't hear from them for 20
but
years.
The reason was because in the case of the air packs or whatever they're called, it was because it was a grant, and so it was all at once.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a different philosophy in the two companies, and that's okay. But we had SCBAs that were 10 years old, and they had to be replaced, and that was on the 6-year capital, and that's.
Yep.
Well, I mean, we're going to have a meeting on Monday night, but due to unfortunate circumstances, we had to cancel it. So we're going to reschedule a meeting, and that was one of the topics. I even discussed it with Neil about equipment and how that topic came up between me and Neil about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
One procurement officer for the two companies.
Yeah, maybe somebody says, hey, look, or just audit and say, look, what do you guys have? What do you need? And go from there. Because let's say the SCBA, the PACs came up again. Not that they won't, but say they had to come up next year. Well, it'd probably be more cost effective to buy them all from the same company than you buy from one, they buy from the other. Obviously, buying
And the other
bulk-
thing, from a finance standpoint, it helps us to understand what the 5-10-year lookout is on equipment, so that we can plan accordingly, because sometimes, we've got it with the capital especially, we're juggling, well, can we pay for it this year, or can we wait till next year? So if we have a procurement officer looking at both companies and creating that asset management plan for us, it would be easier from a budgeting standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's something that we should definitely look at.
So Neil, if you could follow up with the two chiefs and find out why this one budget code is...
And I also have a note to follow up with Len, because he might have some bills in a pipeline, too.
Yeah, so when we do the budget, right, we look at the line item, we look at last year's actuals, we look at the year before actual, and we make a...
Yeah, but I mean,
10,000 looked right, so it may not be, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's just...
Let's find out.
I realize what you do, and it's obviously supported by the numbers you have in front of you, but every year, this is a constant complaint I've heard.
Yeah, oh, and don't forget, garbage disposal contract went up by a bunch. We're at $480,000 a year to just pick up.
What's this, year one we just finished, or year two?
Year one.
We're just finished one, we're in a two now.
We're starting
just
two
started
of three?
two. We started two of three.
Okay.
And we get, after that, 4 and 5 as option years.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, the only other concern I have, and it's not a new one. I mean, a 0% is great. I'm all in favour of a 0% increase, but I think the last time we did that, we had a rough couple of years afterwards, and so I'm wondering whether it might be prudent to here maybe have a 1% increase, and so that the pain over the next couple of years we're minimising that as much as possible.
I agree with Brendan, and you may recall the conversation we had a couple of years ago, and I was mayor at the time, where I expressed that same sentiment. I'm concerned where if you come in at a 0, you don't have any wiggle room in future years. Personally, I'd rather go 1% this year, 1% next year, as opposed to 0 and go into the next year with an unknown, and we may not even be able to keep it at 2. But that's my own feeling.
I think, the counter argument to that, right, is we had, some of this savings has come from staff breakage over the years. People retiring. If you adopt that, let's keep it at 2%, you're sort of giving away that breakage, which will always, as the new employees are on, will continue to get their raises every year, right? So you're almost giving back the breakage. We also had, we're in year 3 of the special tax reassessment
Yes.
fee. So we've got $30,000 in the budget for the 3rd year that only is around for 2 more years, and then it drops off. We had the 150th last year. There were a couple of other one-time events over the past 2 or 3 years that made it as challenging as it was, and while it was challenging, it wasn't brutal. I mean, we got there without, and we survived fairly unscathed. I think that...
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some wringing of hands along the way that I remember. Certainly, it wasn't as straightforward.
We had
gnashing of teeth.
We had to make choices, right? That's what we're here for. We got to make choices. So
I think the one thing to note, as we're talking about one-offs,
right?
This year we've got $100,000, and this is more of a sewer, and as the mayor pointed out earlier, it's sort of a self-sustaining budget, but we've got $100,000 earmarked for professional fees related to the possible sale of the sewer plant.
Fiscal year 17?
Yes. But if we conclude that comes off next year, although it doesn't affect the operating
it's still at
budgets.
net zero, but it's another one time.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
It's just-
obviously, you guys have been looking at the 0. Brendan and I have my concern as I expressed, but I don't.
Did you guys factor in the pool of money for the turf eventually?
Yes.
So there is, and we need to get a separate set of accounting on that. There is a recreation trust fund that some of this money falls back into.
That's
and
the rental fees?
The rental fees, the light fees, it's used to pay for the lights.
Yes.
We're rolling back whatever's left over from the field into the open space fund, as kind of we agreed, not just the oratory money, but the other money as well. And Len is going to keep a side spreadsheet. I call it a side spreadsheet. Probably shouldn't say that.
It's really like a sinking fund as well.
Yeah, I mean, some were just
It's
certain
a
amount of
separate,
money.
it's a separate set of accounting that shows how much we're putting back in that will be used again to do the turf field when the time comes.
So like 6, 7, 8 years from now, that's my concern, is that
Right.
there's something there.
Right.
Okay.
So that is an absolute.
Right, so
end
that
goal.
doesn't show in this operating budget.
All right.
Correct. And we actually hemmed and hawed about that quite a bit because it almost makes it an off-book transaction, which we really didn't want. So we're going to start, Len has to put together a report for us, and that's going to be presented to us. It doesn't involve any formal action or ordinances or anything like that, but we should know how much money is flowing in and out of those trust funds.
Got it.
So again, I mean, the last thing I'll say on it, obviously, if it's the consensus of the group that we go ahead with the one, then I'm happy with that, obviously. But I mean, just from the discussion that we had, then I would say, listening to it, that we can look forward to more 0% budgets as we move forward with
that is the absolute goal.
Well, history has not been kind to us in that regard. So, but that's the last I'll say. I'd say if it's the majority feels that zero is good.
Go back to the 7 and 8% in the early 2000s.
No. I mean, I
You got to keep
think
this
so.
in perspective too. Our zero is only a small portion of the overall tax bill.
Oh, I know.
Right. So
yeah.
you've got the county and you've got the school.
Sure, yeah.
Which are another 70-something percent, 80% of the bill.
What are we?
Right.
18% of the whole.
Oh,
So our zero is not zero across the board.
I agree. I know, but the thing is that it's still if history repeats itself and we have to make some cuts next year and the year after, despite the kind of rosy way that it was remembered, I don't remember it that way. I think we actually really did some soul searching and we cut some things that maybe we shouldn't have, I think keeping the 1% would help us here.
When Guy was mayor, Guy got the zero, and then poor Brendan came in and he got the gnashing of the teeth. That's what you're really saying.
But
Yes, I know. Okay, thank you, Dennis.
I'm done.
Capital, if
Okay,
you could give us some highlights.
So I'll highlight the capital. We talked about the sewer capital earlier. What we've typically done, and we've asked Kevin to put a priority list together of his capital. So this year, we're looking at 14 projects that total $158,000. Again, that number is worked into the revenue generated from the sewer bills. Over on the DPW side of things, Tom had put a request in for roads for like $450. We asked him to come back and try to reduce that to $250, which he did. Major roads that we're targeting are Northfield Road, Summit Avenue, Somerset Street West, and Windsor Way. Other things under the DPW, Tom's got a truck over there that's just about rusted out completely. So the committee has decided to leave his request for the dump truck in the budget.
Can he put his hand out the back?
I was there today. It's pretty bad.
Like the last one?
No, this one's pretty bad. If you stomped your feet, you'd be like Fred Flintstone.
That could save us in gas expenses.
True.
So, Bruce, I'm going to just explain this for a second. So the capital is actually the more challenging one this year. So we've been trying to get to a pay-as-you-go plan, and we've kind of been spinning the tires a little bit because we're teetering right on the edge, but we keep having to borrow that little bit. But there's a big drop-off in 2021. And Len produced a graph, although it's not adjusted for future borrowing that we might do this year, next year, or the year after. But that graph, if we were able to hold borrowing for 3 years, which we can't, we would be at a point where we'd have 1.1 million in cash to spend, as opposed to having to borrow. Right now, we have about 200,000 a year to spend. So there's a big drop-off on the bond.
I think it's 250 this year.
250 cash this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so 250. So there's a big jump in 2021 if we can try and hold the line on increases on the capital as much as possible. And Len had given us, we've basically got $2 million to borrow for the next 4 years if we don't want to increase debt service, which would subsequently increase taxes, right? Forget about the end goal of pay-as-you-go, right? So the reason we're trying to trim back that budget a little bit this year is to try and hold, try and get to that magic spot in 2021 where hopefully we don't have to borrow as much. Because if we had $1.5 million to spend, we'd be in pretty decent shape, because I think this year we're budgeted for 900 total.
For capital?
For capital. And then it would get, obviously it gets better in subsequent years as more bonds drop off. So that's a little bit of the background behind the capital and why we were asked Tom to be a little bit stingy on the roads.
A couple of other decision points the committee's going to have to make, and I know the group from Oaks Road went home, but in the capital budget is a number that holds to the project that we introduced last year. It's a drainage and paving project of Oaks Road, which takes it from the bottom of the hill up. Now, the discussion obviously centers around whether we close it. And if you close it, then this project is not, it's not worth doing. We'd have to...
Well, you still have to deal with the drainage issue
down at the bottom.
with the erosion.
But that number would drop. What we have to remember on this is we've got grant money out there for 250. We have to award a contract in order to get reimbursed for the grant on this job by April 19th of 2018. So we have about a year.
So that gives...
Grant money has to be spent on what specifically?
What we applied for on the
What did we apply for?
it was drainage and it was paving of Oaks Road.
So could we use it for just drainage, for example?
You'd have to go back, Matt, and reapply and reconstitute the job through the DOT. If you bail on the whole thing, it puts a black mark next to your name for future grants from the DOT. We want to give Paul direction if the committee decides to.
We can do it.
Huh?
Well, I think we need to hear from the traffic committee.
And not only that, and this is something we'll discuss.
I don't think we can pave it, as we've discussed.
Wait, say that again?
I don't think we can pave
That
it.
was my question.
pave
You don't think we can if we close it? Why can't we pave it?
We don't need to have that debate now, right? I mean...
No, but I'm saying, and that's fair.
I think at a minimum, though, we have to do the drainage project, so the direction to Paul should be re-engineer this for just the drainage.
Well, do we...
Is that what you want to
I
do?
wouldn't do anything until we talk to traffic, let the traffic...
Well, we can't pave it regardless, so it doesn't matter what traffic says.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's still wait.
Let's-
We've got a year and change.
We've got a year and a bit, yeah.
Right, but that affects our capital, right?
Yes. Worst, you leave it in there, and worst case, it rolls into surplus the next year, you're out of the game, or you decide to redeploy to a couple of additional roads.
Okay.
Yeah, because capital's not designated
Right.
for a particular project. It's not for, you can move it around.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll take that up at a later, that discussion at a later date.
Yep.
The other thing I'd like the committee to discuss, Tom had also requested a pickup truck. He's presently using a 2003 pickup. His life expectancy, his turn on the trucks is typically 12 years. This is now 14 years. The plan would be to buy the new truck with the snowplow, roll this truck down into the clean communities usage that this fellow uses to go around and pick up the garbage and all that, okay?
And any possibility Gary and Tom could drive up to Altoona, Pennsylvania? And get
Now, I saw the truck today, it's pretty beat up.
There's no, like, surplus vehicle?
Who knows? But I mean, the seats are all ripped up, it's banged up, and I think he said the truck usually costs like 60, 70 grand through the consortium, you can get it for 40-something.
So remind me, do we have the truck in the capital, or do we move that to
moved it over
2018?
to
We moved it out because we moved the $150,000 truck back in.
That's right, okay.
But
So-
when you look at next year's DPW, when the Bruce's point about the long-term plan, the capital, and the next year's DPW is $1.1 million. So if the committee sees its way to allowing $42,000 to be moved back into 17, otherwise he's going to come back in 18 and request that as part of that larger number. So
What's the larger number for?
it's for 2018. We've got things like a front-end loader. We go back on a high number on roads at 486. I don't think the committee, I can't speak for the committee, but we don't want to be in a position where we were a guy pre-13. We want to keep up with the roads. So I would ask the committee to consider that request.
So is the 42,000 in 17, how does that affect our borrowing?
I think it's still under. I think we're still
Still under our target?
But, yeah.
You're under, yeah.
But it's not there for next year. Now, remember, it's $2 million over the next 4 years. Right. 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Right.
So whether you spend it this year or next year doesn't matter. You just can't spend that 42 next year. So, I'm...
But it sounds like you would need to spend it next year anyway, right? I mean, that's something that you're going to...
Well, he's going to come back.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know what our surplus is going to be. We don't know what our revenues are going to be next year in terms of...
I'm inclined to include it.
Yeah.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I'm definitely...
Then
Yep.
I'll defer to the finance guys.
He waited long enough, is that it?
He's not going home. He's just staying here.
Yeah, but he has to stay till 11.
I need a motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes, right?
So moved. Second.
We're going to lose the
All
TV
those in
here.
favor?
Aye.
Got to take a break. There's a hard limit on the file size, and you're within 2 minutes of it. I got to reload another file and splice them together and send them up as 2 separate files if you want them on the website.
Okay.
The 3 hours and 30 minutes is a hard limit on this. So if you want to extend the meeting, decide whether you want the last 10 minutes on the internet or not.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but
But you got to take a 5-minute break before.
Oh, we got to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
All right, we're quick. Well, we don't really have that much.
Right.
I did want to talk to Mayor on the, there's one other issue on the Capitol, and I'll try to do it real quick. We've had this discussion with the traffic.
I would say let's just let the last 10 minutes go, and let's just finish this out.
That's fine.
So,
The
Dennis, I would say cut the program at your backs, and not worry about the second file.
Is that okay, Jeff?
Yeah, are we taping?